Good evening. I'm sorry we're a little bit late. We had a closed session. We are going to start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I believe there's no emergency additions or modifications.
There are none.
So I'd like a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Approval of the meeting minutes from August 21st. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
None opposed, one abstention. And we have a new student representative, Morgan Mays.
Hi.
Congratulations on your new appointment. Welcome to the board.
Thank you.
I'm going to tell you beforehand, we'd love to hear from you, and then you're welcome to stay. But usually the student rep leaves to go do homework. So don't be embarrassed to just sneak out the door after.
We've never figured it out.
Yeah. So you have something to share with us
I
about
do.
the beginning of the school year.
Okay, well, I'm Morgan Mays. I'm a senior at Nordhoff. Ms. Cole asked me to represent, so we are off to a really good start this year. We did something different on the first day of school. We had a Welcome Back Wednesday, which was 30-minute classes before lunch, and then NPA and Nutrition Services provided a free barbecue lunch for all the students. We had a DJ and a teacher name that tune contest at lunch as well. And then afterwards, the students rotated with their grade levels through 4 rotations that focused on the 4 pillars of our school, which is scholarship, community, opportunity, and tradition. And in the scholarship, the seniors played College Jeopardy, where we learned about the different money opportunities and financial aid and majors that we could choose. The community part was learning fight songs and cheers for the rallies. And in the opportunity, there was fairs of activities on the quad for all the different clubs and activities on campus. And the tradition was an alumni, student, and teacher panel where we got to ask questions with former Nordhoff students from last year. And then we had a rally in the gym afterwards. There was a teacher lip sync battle, several class competitions where students had to work together, such as a lap sit. We all just sit in each other's laps and stand up. Difficult. And then the fight song cheer, and then the key run. We used the key run to introduce our theme for the year to our students, which is Keys to Kindness. We plan to do things throughout the year to emphasize kindness. We are recognizing every staff and student birthday, continuing senior siblings, and starting the new student siblings program, which is where freshmen will be introduced around campus by the seniors who have more experience, and other things we'll tell you about over the course of the year as they take place. And right now we are planning our fall rally, which will take place on Friday, September 15th.
Who won the lip syncing?
I believe it was the blue team. I'm not sure who was on it though. Yeah.
And do you have information from our other schools as well? Or?
Yes, Summit School. Mrs. Smith reports that we have a barn owl nesting in our mulberry tree next to the asphalt, and teachers have gathered the owl pellets and sterilized them for later use during science. Students will analyze the contest and discuss diet, prey, and predator. And at Matilaha, Mr. Ramirez says, we had an amazing start of the year. Kids are terrific and excited to be here. We have received several compliments from our parents stating that their children are no longer afraid of junior high. And at Topa, Mrs. Damianos reports that the year is off to a great start at Topa School. The staff worked so hard to get everyone set up and ready. Topa PTA is hosting a burrito social on Thursday, August 31st at 6 p.m. Back to school night is coming up on Thursday, September 14th from 5 to 7. The Nutrition Services Department has been diligent at serving food on time and in an organized fashion with a smile on their face, all without a kitchen. They are the definition of creativity and flexibility. The staff and families have been very helpful and patient with the new principal, Mrs. Damianos, and she is eternally grateful. And that's all.
Great.
Way to
Wonderful.
go, good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you every month.
Thank you for having me. May I take the water?
Yes. Okay, public comments. I do have one comment. Steve, did you want to come up? Steve Weed, and speak?
It's provided you with a handout. Yes.
Go ahead.
So I guess I just simply want to say thank you to each and every one of the board members. I have not been here in a while. I've been watching from near and far. And you guys are just rocking it. I know some of you better than others. And I thought, gosh, if I started to address you individually, then time would be gone. But each and every one of you, to me, has shown an amazing amount of flexibility, professionalism, attention to detail, and I personally really appreciate what the board has done in the last year. And I'm thinking, you should, and you. So, Bill Quip is the only people that really like change are bankers. The other thing that I wanted to address, and I know that I've corresponded with some of you as a group outside about ideas related to really the only challenging issue that faces this board this next year. Everything else is happy faces, and that has to do with the Chaparral property. And I haven't really been involved in the Historic Preservation Committee at all. So I printed this and noticed that I actually know one member of the small community. But then I also printed a list of historic landmarks, and as I reflect on what the Historic Preservation, you don't have that, okay, I'll leave it so that you can look at it perhaps in the meantime. But when I think about what defines historic property in a traditional sense, it's something of lasting value that designates something special about the community. And the distinction that I would make is simply that a lot of times people become enamored with the community they live in, and they develop emotional and sentimental attachments to certain things. I just went over to Jersey Mike's to get a soda before I came over. I'm emotionally attached to that. I know the manager, we laugh, but it's not historic. And as you look at the people on the Historic Preservation Committee Society, that's the question that I would raise to him. What is historic about Chaparral? Was there a significant event here? Did we sign a peace treaty with Chumash here? Did we do anything else of lasting value here? And that, to me, is what establishes historic context of a property. So, if you have the opportunity to contact these people, perhaps it'll do some good. Thank you so much, Councilor, for that
Thanks, Steve.
board.
Item 6 is our special presentations. And our first presentation is, we're actually kind of tying it in. We have a resolution later in the evening that is honoring our parent-teacher organizations and volunteers on our schools' campuses. And so we wanted to sort of highlight that if we could. And we've asked some representatives of all those parent organizations to come and speak tonight and just tell us a little bit, either what they're planning this year, how much money they are raising this year, and what they're going to spend it on, just to sort of let the community know how much we appreciate their work and how much they really do add to our district. So I'm just going to go in alphabetical order. If that's okay. For Matilaha, we have Chris Vaughn.
Is that really alphabetical order?
Well, the school, not you. The school, Matilaha is the first school.
I'm thinking, wait a minute.
There's nothing A to M, believe it or not.
Where should I stand?
You could stand here because
Do I
the
have to
mic,
stand over there?
well, the microphone will pick you up better for people who are at home.
For the TV audience.
And tell us, are you, the president or vice president? Tell us what you're doing.
Everyone's gonna follow me and have it really easy. Because following Miss Morgan Amazing over there, I can barely present what I know yet. Okay, so last year I went to 2 Matilaha meetings, PTO meetings. And it turns out that, because I've been in the school system since 1998, Chris, why don't you become the PTO president? Okay, so I said, all right, I'll take on that challenge. I also sub here. I've been subbing since 2002, I believe. So as far as things going on in Matilaha, I don't know a lot yet. And it's going to be a learning experience. And I'm hoping from those parents and people here even that have past, present, or future Matilaha students that will all make it work out. Matilaha has been actually pretty lucrative, solid. We've been able to do a lot of things. We've had good fundraising. It's just whether or not what we do this year too. There's some good small ideas. There's some big one. I would like one big idea. And generally we raise around $8,000, and that seems to be enough for the school system, for our school. We've had a request from the music teacher for some aids. We've had other requests from the administration. So I think we'll be fine. And we're slowly getting on board. Problem with, as everybody here knows, 1 year into Matilaha, 1 year out. It's a quick time. But personally, I think it's a really good time. I love that the whole school system comes together. And we're all one school. Like I said, been here since '98, been doing this. So that's about all I can present right now about Matilaha. We're in the works. We've got about 3 board members, and we're going hard as we can for now.
So is Liberty in 7th grade? So
Liberty's an
you'll be
8th grader.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, my daughter Liberty. 9-year gap, 11-year gap. Had to give her a great name. So it became Liberty. So anyway, that's it in a nutshell. I'm really happy to try to do this, work this out. Like I said, I've been subbing at all the schools since '02. And it's an honor to be offered to be president finally. I guess someone believes that I can do this job, so I'm going to try.
Welcome aboard.
Thanks for doing it.
That's
Thanks a lot.
great.
All right, thank you.
Miners Oaks, Gina. Is it? Oh, okay. I was like,
Sorry, Gina wasn't able to join us this evening. So Susie Taylor, Miners Oaks PTA Vice President. And I'm sure like many others, we're busy planning our fundraisers and welcoming our new students and our new principal. So thank you. We are starting phase 2 of our native garden project with Fish and Wildlife. And that's coordinated with botanist Michael Glenn. And Michael Glenn has also agreed to coordinate efforts with the local raptor center to start building birdhouses to place in the adjacent meadow and on campus. We are working on plans to develop an amphitheater type seating area outside the 6th grade wing. And we are happy to report growth in our music program this year to include kindergarten. And happy to report that enrollment is up from last year for our kindergartens. So that's great. We're working on conducting a survey at our back to school night regarding spirit colors and what the kids would like to see as their possible new spirit colors. And we have lots of grants in the works. We're a PTA, so we're a 501c3, so a little bit different than PTO. Our donations that come in are tax deductible. And last year, Miners Oaks, we ran about $50,000 through our our PTA. So we're really proud of that. We have not set our annual budget yet. We do that tomorrow, and we're hoping to have many new members. It's our first meeting tomorrow night, 6 o'clock at Miners Oaks. We'll probably be standing room only. We anticipate lots of new members, so we're excited. And we have been asked to host a table at the OEF breakfast fundraiser on September 28th, and we do have one seat left. So if any of you would like to join our table, we'd be happy to have you join us. And I think that's all I have.
I have a little clarification. I think most of the PTOs are also 501c3s, just that they're not under the auspices of the PTA national. They're more independent,
Different.
but they're also nonprofits.
Great.
Sounds great.
Thank you. Any other
I'm
questions?
excited about
Thank
the
you.
birdhouses. That sounds.
That's a new project. I'm not completely familiar with it. I just learned about it. So.
We lost a bird at the other, and now we're gaining birds here.
Yeah, they're migrating.
That's what we're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
From Miramani, is it Nikki?
My name is Nikki Crawford. I am with Miramani PTO. I am the co-president, fundraising chair, a lot of other hats. I also am the TK assistant there. Off to a busy start. PTO had a busy summer. We are in the process of finishing up our, we have it named, the Garden of Knowledge. We are doing a drought-tolerant landscaping outside our school. A couple of our teachers were awarded a grant to have Wi-Fi available to the community. So we've got big boulders that you can sit on and some shade, and so that's coming along nicely. Our back to school night is September 14th. We just finished our last Food Truck Friday. The turnout was better than anticipated with the heat. The clouds rolled in. We had our misters on. It was lovely.
We wanted to cook at home. It was a good time.
Yes, a lot of people came and got food and headed towards Ventura, so it was nice. But we do plan on continuing that each and every month on the first Friday of every month. So it's going great. We have a rotation of we had 2 new trucks this month. But our coordinator for that, she really tries to rotate them through and get new ones when we find them. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just for Miners Oaks, you guys do a truck night too, right? Is that Wednesdays?
Yes, third Wednesday.
Third Wednesday. Okay, Nordhoff. Asla?
We're a team. Well, Chelsea Fink is here and Karen Engman is here as well. They're also part of the team.
Yeah.
And the rest of the team is driving girls volleyball and
That's
girls tennis to each of their games. So.
Many hats.
Well, actually, Chelsea, you might have to answer some questions.
Do you want to talk about the on-campus events that we've done?
How about you talk and then I'll talk about the rest of the stuff.
Okay, yeah, you do the money. She's gave the structure of money. Okay, so we are very excited about, this is our second year on the board at the NPA, and I'm the vice president, and so part of what I do is communications and events, anything having to do with communications and events. And we really want to thank Mr. Munson for allowing us, and before that, Dr. Bayless for allowing us to do Ranger Roundup in the evening. Moving that one thing to the evening made a huge difference in FaceTime with parents, because now parents could show up and we had an opportunity to engage with them. Asla is really great behind the table. She's great, getting.
But it also helped
T-shirts
because
out.
it was at noon, so in the middle of August at noon, it was really
It's a
difficult.
lot cooler in the evening, yeah. And so we were able to move that time. Asla was able to get dinner handled by El Charo, and we had some money come in there. But basically, the memberships was really for us. We believe that when connection happens, the money will come later. And so a lot of connection was able to happen on campus for Ranger Roundup. We also made connection at the football games. The snack bar is one of our biggest fundraisers of the year, and I know that she'll have an opportunity to talk about that. We also do the poinsettias, the Christmas trees, year-end giving, the Bite of Ojai that we started this year, and then the Arts Gala that she started, and many of you, thank you so much, attended, where we were able to display and sell student art. It was a pretty amazing event. Thank you for being there. So we have a lot of irons in the fire, and communications and events.
And Chelsea over there, as she has done in I think all of the schools, but San Antonio's next, is actually we're getting 2 more hydration stations.
Yes.
There was a Food for Thought grant that was awarded 3 years ago, Chelsea? 2 years ago. And basically we are helping with the installation and paying and all that, working with the district, and we've been in contact with everybody involved, and 2 of them are going to go into NORAP. Currently there's 1 in the gym, but it's really difficult because the gym is locked a lot of times, so it's really not helpful for a general event because nobody goes into the gym a lot. I mean, it's just impossible. So we're having 1 in the quad near the cafeteria, and the other one possibly outside the gym for the kids who are do tennis and aquatics and track even. Sometimes they don't really use the gym lockers, but they're there practicing, so it's sort of a really helpful area to have that one. The other thing I think that this year, last year was our first year as a board, and it was really sort of getting everything in place and understanding how things really worked. And this year is more actually focusing on specific areas and hopefully making changes for the better. We've been working with Mr. Munson. One of them, Dave Hankins, is not here, but he's our athletics coordinator. MPA does give a lot of money to athletic teams. That's how our snack bar operates. Teams sign up for shifts, and we basically put all the effort in buying the food, and parents work, and then per shift that team gets a set amount. So but that's not the only fundraising we're doing for the teams. A lot of times we're asked to sort of help them fundraise and sort of give it back to their ASB account or purchase things for them. And I think really the idea is to coordinate it and to sort of inform coaches so everybody's on the same page. And Dave is taking that on. And then arts is another fundraiser that we added. MPA gave very small amounts to music and dance, but it wasn't to fine arts. And we added drama to it, and we actually organized, involved the teachers and the kids, and did a fundraiser for graphics, ceramics, and fine arts. And we had a student show, and we sold, actually we gave the kids an option, and nobody wanted to sell their art, but the ceramics kids did. And, so then each department who participated got the part that they fundraised, which was a really, so basically setting up a venue so they can fundraise for themselves, but doing all the logistical work and using MPA, our insurance, and our accounting to help them do that, and that was really great. The kids really had a massive response. It was awesome. And then the jazz band participated, and they played, so they also were one of the groups that participated, so it was wonderful.
And one other title that we have, which is new, is the community outreach. Osla and I spent last year going from place to place and outreaching to the Arts Commission, to the Rotary, to Lions,
City of
Ojai, like basically everybody. But now Lori Hamer, thank God, is our community outreach person. She couldn't be here tonight, but she's going to be attending these places and basically being the Morgan Mays of the community and sharing our story and what it is that we really do. So everything's coming together. It's exciting. It's an exciting time.
It's an exciting year.
What's your budget?
Well, we took it over at a $22,000 of fundraising and spending per year, and we finished it at around 33. So we're hoping to add another 10.
We have our
this
first
year.
board meeting tomorrow night.
So it's going to go up to 100, hopefully. I don't know how soon, but that's sort of the goal. But really the difference at Nordhoff is every team also fundraises, and Gridiron fundraises. So it is sort of, it's a harder fundraising unless you can really do things that can affect the whole school and bring everybody together. And I think that's the hardest part of it all. Thank you.
Thank you.
San Antonio, is it Maggie Rogers?
was a long time ago.
Your face looks familiar.
My name is Maggie Rogers. I am the PTO president at San Antonio. I also get to work there, which is awesome. And working there actually gives me a lot of insight as to what needs to be done at the school, which is why I wanted to be the PTO president this year. One huge thing at our school is we don't have a good shade structure. And so our kids are, I actually took pictures of it today because it was just horrible. Our kids are eating under broken easy ups. And like today, the water was falling on the tables all over these children. If it rains at all, like even the day before, we can't eat outside. The kids are forced to eat inside. Last week, because of the heat, the kids have to eat inside the classrooms. They just have no shade outside at all. And then, and I was glad to hear about the hydration station too, because that is another big thing. We have one working water fountain outside of the classroom in our school that is accessible to the children during breaks. We do have one in the middle of the playground, but it doesn't work. I mean, the water comes up maybe about this much. And so we are working really hard at getting a hydration station. Some of the fun things we want to do is put in a gaga ball pit, because the kids, every time they go to see me, they come back begging for a gaga ball pit. So that's one thing we want to do. We want to be able to fund more STEAM programs, because STEAM is huge at our school. And I actually also run the after-school program, which is Hawk's Nest. And so we want to include more enrichment programs to our students during that time. And then another big thing is our kindergarten and our TK corner. We've been working really hard to get that kind of vamped up and give those kids like a real place to play that's with stuff for their size. So we have a lot of fundraisers this year. We tend to do really well. We have one of the smaller schools, and so our goal every year is $50,000, and we do pretty well on our fundraisers. And we're already off to a great start. We raised like $1,500 just with our back to school night, and then we've gotten a lot of direct donations. So we're looking like we're gonna have a good year.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Summit? Rhonda? Well, they do have a wonderful PTA. We know I've gone to their, is it their back to school night where they have all the jumping, they have climbing walls and jumping, just wonderful. Their fall festival.
Yeah, fall festival.
Oh, well, yeah, Maryland, yeah.
We
So
have a PTO meeting on Thursday, so we'll probably be talking.
everyone will be elected then. And then Topa Topa. How's that? Get to come back up?
Chelsea is involved in both, but doesn't.
Chelsea, come on.
They gotta have Lisa.
Kira,
I'm not gonna.
you go.
Here. I'm not gonna talk too much. I'm actually gonna introduce Lisa and have her talk. But the only thing I wanted to tell you that is different this year a little bit with Topa, we are actually our music contributions have sort of expanded a little bit, where we have a new band teacher, and Lily and Tally and I, and Chelsea's in on as well, and parents a little bit. Basically, we are gonna provide funds for a specialized teacher to help in the beginning month, and then probably 2 months, with the band teacher, where the kids are broken into the little groups, and this is the time where they don't really know how to hold the instruments, and they really don't know how to put on a reed and things like that, where there'll be more than one adult per little group helping the kids in that moment, because we found that it's really difficult. We have a big band, and in the beginning of the process, the first month or two, so we agreed to help financially with that. The other thing Topa PTA funds is extra library hours, PE. This year we also have some of with the science program that's coming, we have funds to be able to support that, but we fund our own art program,
Lisa's the coordinator, so she's going to talk about it. And I think that is one of the most exciting things lately that has happened in Topa, and it's been very vibrant and very exciting. So she's going to take it.
Me though. I'm Lisa Duclos. So yes, I coordinate the Topa Topa Art Program, which we sort of, I think this is going on our third year? Yeah, third year where we're, our funds are used to have a strictly parent volunteer docent schedule. Every classroom it has the opportunity to have art for the children at least twice a month, if not every week. We have wonderful volunteers within the school that will we have basically our own art library, our art closet set up now where we have just about any art supply that you can think of that we've been sort of collecting and ordering throughout the years. And so there's an abundance of materials and great opportunity for people to come in and teach art lessons that are really hopefully core curriculum based. We try to align the art with what the children are studying in their classroom. For example, last year my son was in 6th grade and they do a lot of coursework with Greek studies and ancient Egypt and ancient civilization. So we did cave painting lessons, we did Greek vases, we do Roman, different Roman mask or Greek masks, sorry. So and then we're kind of collecting a library as well of the art lessons. The docents for the particular grade levels are hopefully kind of keeping those lessons along with samples in a cabinet for the future parents to come through the school. So there's always going to be sort of material and resource for them to work from. The teachers have loved it as well because they have the opportunity to use the art closet and obtain materials for projects they might like to do with their kids in the classroom aside from what we're doing through the art program. And also we're trying to kind of, we've partnered last year at least with the library, the Ojai Library, and Bliss Frozen Yogurt, where we would kind of take our classrooms projects and display them and let the children know, hey, your display of, your Statue of Liberty art or whatever it might be is hanging at the library. Have your parents take you to the library, and it's a good way to kind of get them out and about, and they love seeing their artwork. And last year we purchased a really nice display case for our hallway as well, where we're sort of rotating the children's artwork in and out. So every classroom has the opportunity to showcase their work, and they just love it. The kids, when they come back to school on Monday after it's been hung over the weekend, they're all crowding around and saying, "Oh, there's mine, and there's so-and-so's," and stuff. So it's been really fun and fantastic, and really grateful for all the parents that are out there helping volunteer their time and resources. Great.
What would we do without our PTOs and PTAs and NPAs? Thank you all very much for coming and sharing. Item 6.2, concerning AB 288 dual enrollments. Very exciting also.
It
I'll let
is.
you
So we've
introduce
got,
it.
I'll actually be handing over to Cheryl here real quick to introduce our dignitaries that we have with us from the Ventura County Community College District. But just to tee up, what really brought this item to us today, and Mike, it's actually you I have to thank for helping put this on our radar a number of months back. This is, I believe, a very exciting opportunity for the district, and so Cheryl's been doing quite a bit of research. I'll just say I reached out to my counterpart down in Santa Paula a few weeks ago, actually, when the great article in the Star appeared, and he was very positive about the experience Santa Paula's experienced over the past few months as they've been partnering with Ventura College. And could not have been a better rollout, he said, as far as from their perspective. So it's great to be able to hear from a colleague in the county of how this program is really working well, and really what the legislature intended when they enacted this AB 288. And so with that, I'll throw it over to Cheryl, and she can give a little more background as to what this is and who we have with us.
Yeah, I'll introduce our guests in one moment here, but as you guys know, AB 288 allows college districts to enter into agreements with school districts in order to increase the opportunities for dual enrollment. These courses would be called CCAP classes, College and Career Access Pathways is the name here. I'm brand new to this, so I've been learning about it over the last 2 weeks. It seems very, very exciting. I have learned about the benefits for our students, the particulars about how to actually run the courses, and then the details of the agreements a little bit. It turns out that Ventura County College Community District has already entered into agreements with Santa Paula and Fillmore. I too have reached out to a colleague at Santa Paula. It seems like their first English course is going quite well, and they're very excited about the opportunity. This is the process is a multi-part process that I'm sure we'll hear more about. This is sort of the first step, hearing the informational piece tonight, which is what we're about to do next. So we have President Mr. David Keebler here, VP of Academic Affairs Dr. Kim Hoffmans, and Dr. Tim Harrison, the Dean of Athletics, Health, Kinesiology, Performing Arts, and Off-Campus Programs. So I'll turn it over to them to talk to us.
Well, board members and superintendents, I'm very, very pleased to be here. I wanted you to know that I'm an advocate for this potential partnership we have. I started out as a high school math teacher, and I remember looking at the high school students saying, why can't every one of these students get benefit from going to college, whether it's a 4-year or a 2-year? Back then, it was really pushing hard on the 4-year, but now I've had about 40 years experience in the 2-year, so I rephrased that. I think every community member will benefit from going to a community college, regardless of your position. So having a program like this that the state has finally approved is a real win-win situation. It's a win for the students first. We put students first. And if students can pass college credits while in high school, that's a bridge for them to go on to the 4-year or 2-year colleges. So we see that as probably the best way for students to complete high school and get into a college. And it's a win for the community. Because our students are our number one asset. So we want to use the resources we have in our community and basically integrate and optimize those. We don't want to displace anything that we have currently working. I look at this agreement, the potential agreement, as an additive agreement. We have resources, you have resources. We can combine those resources without displacing anything and provide a better avenue for our students. So with that, I want to turn it over to Tim. Tim has got a PowerPoint for us to go through this, and Tim can answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Cheryl, the lights are behind you.
right behind you.
Oh, it's my new job, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so as they've said, we appreciate coming and having the opportunity to speak to you because we want to partner with our K-12, especially OHI, because we've tried to have classes at Nordoff, and because of the enrollments, they haven't always been successful. So I think this is our avenue. This is our real opportunity to be able to have some of our college courses from Ventura College offered at Nordoff. And so it's really exciting. And when Dave talks about our students, I mean, it's our collective students. We really want to help our community students achieve their goals, whether it be a goal of becoming a mechanic or a goal of transferring to Ventura College, which would be a great goal, I think, or if it's to go off to a university. These agreements and taking these courses have been proven through research to benefit all those students. And so I think it can, exactly what Dave was saying, be a win-win for all of us. So a couple of things. When Holden introduced this bill a few years ago, it was really targeting our underrepresented students. So those students that wouldn't necessarily be thinking about college, not even think that it is a possibility. So one of the nice things about this is the students can take college courses in an environment that they feel comfortable with. And if they have little successes in an environment in their high school that they feel comfortable with, they'll think, maybe I can do this, Just a little confidence booster can go a long ways. And they've seen a lot of successes. It's really to help streamline streamline the high school student in being successful in high school and transitioning to college. There's no magic wand that, you know, they step from one door and into our doors and they automatically know stuff. I mean, we kind of make that assumption that they're a different person the minute they take off that graduation hat at Nordoff, and then they're automatically a college student and have all the tools. Well, they don't. But by taking some of the college classes in the high school setting, that does give them some of the tools, again, to help them be successful. There have been lots of research that have shown that this is successful. It really helps students that are struggling academically because maybe they're not challenged enough, or there's some other thing that this maybe appeals to them. Also, it helps with persistence of students that struggle with standardized tests. This helps them with that achievement as well. With their college readiness, statistics have shown that students don't transfer to college and don't require the basic skills. They test higher into math, they test higher into English, so then they can complete faster. And that's what we all want, right? We want them to be able to complete and be successful. So that's why we're doing this. We want to do this for the students, to benefit the students. And the nice thing about having the CCAP agreement, and we've had dual enrollment at the high school in Ojai, but one of the things is, because we're a community college and the community college has the open access, that we've had to leave the classes open where the community could also take the classes. But through this agreement, it is closed access, and it's only for high school students. So that's one of the nice things about this agreement. Other thing about this agreement, it's during the academic day. So your students are already in the routine of going to classes, and they're going through their 6 periods or 5 periods, depending on if it's the senior that's getting out early. But that's the routine. So if we can capture that student when they're already in school, and with a college course, and just make it part of their day. Make it intentional, that college is not an option. It's just part of that's just your next step. And hopefully that mantra will continue, and they'll digest it and make it happen. So it's part of the pathway, and it really can expand enrollments to students. And I alluded to this earlier, is that one of the problems we've had offering our Ventura College classes to our Nordoff students is they've been after school, and there haven't been enough students to populate those classes. So many of the classes we haven't been able to offer. We've had to cancel them, and it's disappointing because we want to be able to share those resources and to be able to work with your students as well. And so into the specifics, that's Tim's area.
Thanks, Tim. Again, Tim Harrison. I'm overseeing many things on campus, but my new initiative here is directly related to dual enrollment. I am highly motivated personally. I've got an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old coming through the pipeline, so I know exactly where a lot of the parents are thinking in terms of just trying to make this great program work. The other thing I would add is that not only has Nordoff struggled in some of the after schools, but other institutions have also struggled. So it's not just because of Nordoff's location. I think it just comes down to the students are busy in the afternoon. The after school's out. It's tougher for them. They've got other commitments and other positive things going on in their life. So why not try and capture them during the school day, as Dr. Hawkins said. So I'm responsible for the specifics, and the devil's always in the detail, and there's a lot of things to talk about. So working with the principals and Dr. Knox, that'll be our responsibility. Following with some guidance from the board here, we'll be bringing, I'm also working on a handbook that lays out all the details so everyone can see that before any final decisions are made. But I do think that as we pointed out, we do have 2 programs that are going right now, and so we're learning a lot of the challenges and all the positive things that are going on at Fillmore Unified School District as well as Santa Paula. Only thing I would just try and point out on here is that the positive thing, allowing enrollment up to 15 units per semester for a student, if that grows into that. I would just point out that El Camino, which is right in our backyard, right next to us, right on campus, they had 3 students that completed 60 units with an AA degree and a high school diploma. And that's what Dave was talking about when he was in other states are way ahead of that. But our goal would be for sure every student to take at least one class to get that little push, as well as maybe possibly up to 15 or 20 units, or even 30 units, so they're ready to go on and move on there. So that was an important thing to jump out there. As Dr. Hoffman said, the textbooks are going to be free for the students. That's another big advantage that they wouldn't get if they were a college student going through this. So taking advantage of that, and there's no material costs. And if there's any other details I can point out, that I can talk for hours on this topic, so I'll just keep moving through. One thing that is important is making sure that with this agreement that we obviously have the appropriate the contracts. We're in compliance with that, and not to displace anybody. Specifically, one thing about faculty is that you got to make sure that they are in compliance with all the ed code regulations. I think the displacement key is very important to make sure that the faculty, the unions, feel confident that this is a great win-win marriage for them, and how can this collaboration work. Whether it is one model where we would have 2 instructors actually in the classroom, one of our Ventura College instructor as well as a Unified School District instructor collaborating, working together, or possibly if it does work out, we could actually hire an employee here to be able to teach the class, and of course they would have to collaborate with themselves, which it might be a little bit easier to do. So, and then finally, just the reports, regulations for the institution. We do go through a reporting process, and that's something that we'll be working through in collaboration with the district. And then, before I switch it off.
One other thing too that's really nice, I mean, you've probably heard that Ventura College has the Promise, where our high school students from the OHI can get their first year of college paid for. And so if you had one of your students that had 30 units, come out of high school with 30 units, they could literally, go in as a sophomore and get their whole next year of Ventura College paid for through our Promise program, and essentially get an associate degree at no cost. I mean, that's a real potential, and could benefit a lot of our students that maybe are struggling financially. So other things, the addendum. So there's a 2-part to the CCAP agreement. One is kind of a general agreement. It's a district-to-district agreement. And it talks about, like Tim said, that we follow the collective bargaining of both institutions. We've got to make sure that we're upholding our collective bargaining, that you're upholding your collective bargaining, and that we're following all federal and state guidelines, all those kind of things. So it's very, it was very prescriptive when it came down from the state. And so it's not the fun part. The fun part is the addendum. On the addendum, that's when we get to work with Cheryl and get to work with David and get to work with the players and figure out what will best serve the needs of your community. Is it more CTE, or is it more A through G requirements? I mean, what are you looking for? What college courses can best serve your students, be it transfer, be it CTE, and so really find the right combination that'll help your students complete what is best for them. So that's the exciting part, and lay out that plan. So that's what the addendum is. It's more into the nitty-gritty. So this is informational. If this is something that you want to pursue further, then we take those next steps and dive into the weeds together. Let's see what else. So we adapted through the individual high school, determining what the pathways are. And then once we did that, we came up with the addendum. It would need to come back to this board for your approval. So tonight was just informational item, but the next step would be actually coming back to your board for your approval, and then it again also has to go to our board for approval for second reading. So, and that's pretty much it. That's our process. Do you have any questions for us?
If I could actually jump in just real quick, Tim, you mentioned it a little bit, but can you just give a little more detail for the board and those in the audience? How does it actually look for a student going into that class? You mentioned that there's two possible scenarios as far as our staff teaching class or it being team taught, but just kind of walk us through what each of those scenarios are.
I'll use the example at Fillmore High School. They're doing an environmental science class, and they're basically tied together their ESRM class, which is the 12th graders as well as our instructor. So we'll bring, first thing is you have to identify the class. When you identify the class, let's just say there's 35 students in the class. We go and do, in our pilot, we did a presentation and told the students, hey, this is what it is. And eventually the word will get out what exactly this dual enrollment program is. And envision this, that what we have as a typical class, a 3-unit lecture class is typically 52 hours of class time. Some classes, if they're 4 units, they're more hours. So in this scenario, this I believe is a 4-unit, and it's basically Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They'll be going for an hour for basically 18 weeks. And they go through, and our instructor is working with the other instructor. They're both in the classroom, and they're delivering the curriculum. Not only our curriculum, but a mesh through collaboration time of both curriculums. And if you look closely, a lot of the conversation is before that is like, oh yeah, these two classes totally match. They're usually, this example would be AP type course that fits, okay? So we find the match from a curriculum standpoint. Those instructors are working together, and sometimes, ultimately, our instructor may be doing a lead on that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but Tuesday, Thursday, that our instructor is not there, but the continuation of the material is still happening. So it really is a big win-win, imagining having 35 students and 2 professionals, one in the front doing the presentation or doing the lecture kind, and the other one is working the room, making sure that they get it, or just collaborating back and forth, communicating back and forth. So that's where I think a lot of the positive things can happen. The other scenario is ultimately you have an individual who has a master's in the appropriate discipline, meets the minimum quals for our institution, and can actually teach our curriculum. We would go through a hiring process to make sure that they are technically our employees. The details is going to be how does that fit into the agreement, and making sure in terms of compensation and time-wise like that. But the key point is that they are collaborating with themselves, so there's not as much of a challenge to that end. We do have on campus a lady by the name of Lauren Wintermeyer, who is one of our current counselors. She's been kind of giving me a lot of information on the side. She ran with Santa Barbara City College 100 different classes they had a semester through their feeder programs. It was pretty amazing. So she's well versed on it. So she's giving me a lot of the details as we go through this pilot program together. And I think that is ultimately, it would be one instructor in the classroom with 35 students. So hopefully that answers your question. But really the match of the classes. And I've always kind of looked at it 4 different categories of students. The AP student is really achieving, probably going to have an opportunity, a very high opportunity to go right off to a 4-year institution. We still want to capture them because they may not be coming through our doors. There's the 3.0 B student, that's what I was, who is a path towards going there, but also wants to be able to transfer or possibly pick up a CTE. There's the CTE students that really want to get that skill. I think that's an important piece of it. And if you look closely at the Holden information, they're really focused on the CTE certificates as well as transfer. Those are the kind of the 2 groups of students that really want to see happen. And then finally, there is the remedial student that has struggled, whether it's at Nordhoff or even at Chaparral. You want to make sure you have plans for them as you go through this. So I think we're definitely excited into seeing all 4 of those groups get served through this program.
I think with the way financially colleges are going, you're going to see more and more of all of those levels going through to the community college for a couple of years instead of going straight to the 4-year. And I did hear something at the community college about the remedial classes now are changing. So it might, some of the students maybe from Chaparral that wouldn't have thought, or even Nordhoff, who wouldn't maybe have thought this was
what they wanted to do or what they were capable of doing will learn that they are absolutely capable of it. And they have an opportunity, like you said, to do that in a safer, I don't mean, it's unsafe, but just where they feel comfortable. It's like, oh yeah, I did that, I can do it somewhere else too.
Yeah, the Santa Paula example is they're doing an English VO2, which is like the prereq to the transfer level English. And so they're taking that in the fall semester of their senior year, and then their second semester they're taking transfer level English. They'll be done with their English requirement before they even get to college. They'll be good. Great.
Well, I'm sort of, for lack of a better word, I kind of don't get where the real action is here. You know, it seems to me that there's something in it for you, and I'm not really clear what's in it for us in terms of finances. What's in it for you financially? I see a reference to you guys claiming apportionment, which I assume is something similar to ADA that we deal with.
Right.
So, could you get into that a little bit? I just want to. I don't really understand what the dynamics are here in terms of the finances.
Yeah, okay. So let's make the assumption that there's 783 students at Nordhoff High School, and how many are at Chaparral?
About 45.
45. So you're trying.
Yeah,
to
your
get,
assumption was weird.
I looked it up right before I went.
went.
But I think the key that I see as our advantage is that at the end of the day, you would like for every student to have an opportunity to go to college. So how do we bring programming to you for that? And one key point for this is that I think as the finances are more and more challenging for parents to get them to go down that pathway of college or even CTE certificates, this is ultimately, at the end of the day, it is free for those students. Now, where I see the challenges just from the pilot has always been about how do we get everyone to see that vision from a philosophy standpoint? Because some people may say college is not for everyone. I would disagree on that, but I'm in this profession. I do want to see people getting skills and skill sets, and so these classes that we have to offer can be presented at the high school level. And I truly believe that as this develops, everyone will see, gosh, a lot of benefits to having the 15 units, to having to complete that, and having that skill set behind it that you must have.
But I think you were asking specifically about ADA. We would only claim apportionment after you've gotten your ADA. So it's your students that have completed their fourth period. They're taking a fifth or sixth period where you don't get paid anymore if they can continue to take classes, because that would be the target students we would be looking at. Because you need to collect your apportionment, and that way we could collect apportionment. Because we don't want any harm to come to you.
So it's
we
not
know
zero,
you.
it's
We
not
know
zero
you
sum.
have no.
we
You don't have a
collect
great
and they
budget either, just like we don't.
I was going to give you a mathematical explanation. Remember Venn diagrams?
I do.
See, I get to use it once in a while. So you
Gosh,
have
you got him
a circle over
excited.
here. This is your student population and your ADA and your dollars that you get. And you got a circle over here, and that's the community college, FTES apportionment. So we can operate in two separate circles. What this legislation does is it creates an intersection where it says you both can operate if you follow this legislation, where you both get your apportionment and your ADA funding and the students benefit. That's really what this does for us.
And how have other districts handled, as you probably know, and Dave, you know more about this than I do, like I kind of started learning more about it. Our AP classes are graded up to a 5. Do you guys typically grade these at 5s like that? Do you treat it like an AP class? How is that handled?
It would be transcripted. They would get an A. They get a letter grade.
But you probably, the issue I'm talking about is probably a little bit
Weighted grade.
weighted grade, exactly. Do you know how other districts handle that?
So my understanding is that they will have a high school transcript. They'll also have a college transcript. And so they could get, if they got an A in the class, they would get you would have your 5.0.
It would be weighted.
It would be weighted that way. But it's all about ours being, they would have a Ventura College transcript with the grades on there. And the other thing that I think is important about that is that at the end of the day, those students take that class, but then they have to take a test at the end to show that they're going to get a 5. And some of them do get 3s and 4s. And some institutions throughout the nation will not take that college credit if it's a 3 or a 4, whether it's independent, CSU, or UC. So
Sometimes
if they
even a 5.
in our program,
They won't take a 5.
if it's articulated with those schools, it's an automatic. And many of our classes are CSU, UC transfer.
And my understanding is that there are many colleges who cap the number of AP credits you can take in. And so I'm assuming that because it's a college transfer, on your transcript,
yeah,
that would not be capped. So you could actually get more credits than through AP. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Typically, I mean, they do cap. I mean, some universities do cap what you transfer, but I mean, they're capping at like over 60.
Right. Which nobody gets that for AP credit.
Well,
I don't know.
Yeah, right. Nobody's
that
getting
do.
that. I mean,
But I
you
know
never know.
kids-
There could be, but
Well, I know
never
kids
say
who
never.
had their APs not capped. They
Right.
were capped out, and they took more than they could take with them to college.
In my previous life, I was assistant director of admissions and a director of admissions at a CSU, Cal Maritime, and I was all responsible for letting students in. So there's nothing better to see a student come that has attempted college courses on their resume when they get to them in the junior year. So that's another key thing that I think people understand is that all students, if you've made the effort and you can see that you can do college level work, you're going to be put at the front of the line for some of these independent schools and many of the CSUs and UCs if you've made that attempt. It's kind of like just a known fact is like if a student decides to go out calculus, free calculus, or they go to the algebra 2 level, that's kind of the thing. If we see that they only went to algebra 2 and they didn't really risk free calculus, that would affect them on their admissions process. So again, it's all about building that resume for those students to transfer or to move on to whatever they want to do. So that's a key piece of this.
So are you saying that college admissions would look more favorably on these transfer units than on AP classes?
I think it's a combination of both. So they're like, oh, they got this agreement, they're already there. Now, I think it's a positive win-win. So that's how I would see it. Of course, I was in my role at a CSU, but I was in those circles where they talked about what kind of profile is ideal. And we were seeing at that time, and this was 2007, more and more students starting to take college courses to increase their resume to get into the institution they want to.
So if they do 4 classes and get ADA for us, does that mean they can only do 2 classes a year that would be part of this? Or can all of those, or semester, sorry. Or can those 4 be?
One of the things with this new agreement, it used to be a high school student could only take 12 units a semester. They've upped it to 15 units with this. So they could through dual enrollment, through the CCAP agreement, you have 2 more periods. So we could do 2 more periods. But then they could still, we're not necessarily eliminating our other agreements with you. We could continue to offer classes after 6th period. So they could take additional classes if we offered classes after 6th period.
I'm thinking more like a student at Nordoff right now could take 6 AP classes. So potentially they get 5s on all 6 AP classes. They could have that many credits.
I think in here in the detail, this 15 is our max, is a disagreement, yeah.
Right,
So they could
15.
ultimately take up to 15 units, but that might
Per
be.
semester.
Per semester.
But we couldn't do all of those because the student wouldn't get their 4 periods with the high school. So we have to be very careful. We want to make sure that the high school has their 4 period before we tack on the college courses because we want to be in partnership with you.
Not take them.
Right.
Okay.
You gave a couple of examples. What are the most successful subjects that seem to work? You talked about an English course and an environmental science course, but
This is relatively new to us, like really new. We have 2 courses that are being piloted.
so those do work.
At Mesa College, the CIO down there has a strong math English component, and all of their dual enrollment is focused on math and English. And the successes of those students in college has been huge. I don't know the statistics, but it has been because they have such a strong foundation in math and English from those dual enrollment programs with the high schools. They come into their college classes or in the university classes, and they're showing huge successes. So that's been a big success.
I think it would depend a lot on our high school, right? I mean,
It
we're
depends
gonna be
a lot on
looking
the high
at,
school.
you're gonna be looking at what's gonna be best for your students.
Yes.
They're not gonna be choosing as much as you, I mean, they are, obviously, but you're gonna be helping the flow
Absolutely.
of choice.
And there might be a niche that you don't have a faculty member but you really need an environmental science, or you really need an astronomy. Maybe you need this component, you haven't been able to offer it, that we can help you with it.
Along those lines, can you speak more to the, because in the fantasy that you have when you hear this, you think, wow, you guys end up effectively paying for part of the curriculum at Nordoff, and thus helping us to have smaller class sizes, among other things. But you also talked about 2 teachers, and then the aspiration that maybe eventually you could get to 1 teacher, and then you mentioned that one of the requirements would be a master's degree, I think you said. So, is it possible that you would provide us a teacher and we wouldn't have to commit one of our teachers to the classroom, or is it either 2 teachers or 1 teacher, and the 1 teacher wouldn't be one of our teachers? If you know what I'm saying.
I think
And I clearly didn't attend any of your classes.
You articulated it very well.
The key thing is that this is a partnership, and I want to make sure that this does not displace any instructor in what they really want to do. So I think that would be the first thing I would say is that, let's just say hypothetically we go down a path where it's pick a psychology class, if that's in your curriculum. Do you guys have a psych class?
We have an AP psychology class.
So let's say that scenario was that we were coming out there. The reality is that our class is only 52 hours. So in order to, the students have to be busy, 5 days a week. So it doesn't, it wouldn't be in a scenario where we would just come out there 3 days a week, and what would the students be doing the rest of those days? I would also worry about the four periods they need to have in order for you to get your apportionment. So I don't know if it would ever displace something.
Clear. I mean, what I was imagining is they're taking their 4 classes.
Okay.
We're getting our full ADA.
Yeah.
My idea was that this is just an additional class.
You could.
But it sounds like you're saying it would only be 3 days a week by its definition somehow?
You can. So that is another model. So the models you'll see is where we hire your faculty that meet our minimum quals, and they become our employees. As obviously they're your employees too.
But they work 5 days a week
Right.
in the class.
Right.
But you pay the salary.
We would pay the salary as our employees.
And I guess what I'm not following is why wouldn't they work 5 days a week? That somehow seems like an unusual thing here, right?
If they're not our teachers, they're actually the college professors.
Right.
They're only teaching 3 days
I
a
don't
week.
remember that. I guess back in the day, my college classes were only 3
Well,
days a week.
Well,
Or
so
2.
so maybe not. We would pay them to teach the college curriculum, which might only be 3 days a week, and you'd pay them the other 2. So we'd have to work it out depending on those. So that's one model. The other model is more of a team or learning community type model where the faculty are teaching together, which has a lot of benefits. Faculty can enhance each other's teaching, and they learn from each other, and then there's a lot more hands-on in the classroom. That a lot of positive learning communities. There's so much richness that happens in that environment. And then the model you talked about is, yes, we could send our faculty member out there and teach an independent class. The thing is, our agreement says is that can happen, but it can't displace any of your classroom faculty. So it has to be a class that wouldn't displace one of your faculty.
And unless I'm missing something, I mean, I'm not thinking of displacing anyone. I'm thinking of a class right now that's
Enhancing.
got 45 kids.
Sure.
That maybe some of those kids would be interested in a slightly different class. Thus, we got a class with 25 and a class with 17.
As long as it's enhancing it and not displacing your faculty, absolutely, we could do that. That is another model.
I like the idea of students earning credits. I worked for a number of years with online game payments, and I know you try to make it easy for people to win in a game. They get credits, and then once they have the credits, they don't want to lose them. So the only way to not lose your college credits is to go to college. So those kids who are teetering, it's something that pushes them into college. Everybody's growing up playing games, and this just goes with game theory, so I like that.
Well, there's a lot we mutually have to learn on this. I think once we get into it, we look at what are the parameters, how do we optimize our resources to benefit the student, keep the student in the center of this. We'll be able to see there's a lot of things we can do because we've never seen them before. And so the first step is the first step, though, so that's why we got to do something first and then improve upon it. We're looking forward to that.
I have one follow-up question. Do you have any insights into the college level course? Like, we already have college level courses that are called AP, and the thing about those is that they're high school kids getting curriculum that's college level. I've also heard of occasions when high school kids, for various reasons, will actually attend a college class with other college kids. I assume it's a different experience. You know, when you're in a college class with college kids, that's a different kind of college class than a college curriculum with high school kids. Any insights into that?
I would just say the one you're talking about is when they do come onto our campus, they're obviously the varied experience in the conversations. Imagine a classroom that's got a 14-year-old as well as an 8-year-old taking a class. Those conversations may be much more in depth with examples or collaboration kind of pieces. So that is something I would agree that there is that positive thing, which is ultimately what we want them to experience is eventually get to our institution, through a pathway. I do think that the number one thing for me has always been, okay, if there's 783 students at Nordoff and 45 over at Chaparral, the dream is for everyone to see what college really is about. And if this is the carrot or the gateway for them, I think it's a win-win for everybody.
It'll help the transition. I mean, so they're getting the exposure to college, but not the full exposure. But at least they've gotten their feet wet, so that when they get onto the college campus, at least they know the rigor of the curriculum, and then they can get the other opinions of the college students, the peer learning it from that aspect. And then there are some college courses that we probably wouldn't recommend have. Our nude figure drawing class probably wouldn't want offered on the high school campus. I mean, that would be reserved for their college curriculum. So
I do think, Kevin, though, that scenario where you're talking about, I don't think it would help the numbers in the class, because we would the only thing it would help us do is if our teacher did have a master's and was teaching one period a day that they were funding part of, then we would have a little extra funds for hiring extra staff. Otherwise, it wouldn't really change the numbers because of that 3-day versus 5-day.
I thought of some things, but we could talk about that.
But we could have more teachers in the classroom.
You can imagine a self-study environment where you could have even more kids. Maybe a couple of these classes would feed into a self-study. Maybe.
Thank you. Lots of ideas.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Very, very interesting. Oh, Shelley, exciting. 6.3. Board discussion regarding SB 328, pupil attendance, school start times. Did you find out whether they voted on it?
I couldn't find anything on it.
Okay.
They voted, well, it hasn't gone for the final vote, but the committee vote was on the first, and it has passed that next
True.
hurdle, they will vote before the 15th.
So it passed the Senate, both the committee and the Senate, and then the House committee, but not the,
That's my understanding.
wow,
It's making its
Moving.
way, it's on its last vote, and, yeah.
so, I guess we're going to be receiving
straight to
information,
Cheryl.
it says, from Dr. Knox regarding, school start times and Ohio Unified District. If approved, SB 328 would require all California middle and high school schools, to start no earlier than 8:30. Research indicates, I'll let you go on about.
All right. Well, yeah, I tried to figure out, so I think we're in agreement that it looks like it's gone through the Senate and is currently in the state assembly, so we'll see if it passes. Last Friday we were at a Marilyn, and she's left now, but we were at a VCOE training, and part of that training was people bringing back information from a recent conference that they had gone to in Sacramento with a lot of updates. And it seems that in Sacramento they do think that if it makes it through the assembly, that when it gets to the governor, that at that point Governor Brown would likely veto it, just because he continues to want to give local control. So we'll see where it ends up, but that's what is being talked about currently up there right now. Again, this is something that just in the last couple of weeks since we were last together, I've tried to learn as much as I can about it, and it was interesting to see that it has resurfaced as a topic many times. I talked about that a little bit in here. There's a lot of research out there on it. It does appear to definitely be some positive benefits to the later start times. I quoted a study that I was able to gather some data from, and of course the benefits appear to be one, of course, that they're getting more hours of sleep when the start times are moved back later, so our adolescents are getting more hours of sleep. They are less likely to be depressed. They're less likely to use caffeine and other substances, less likely to have car accidents. There's less absenteeism, less tardiness, and then as well as higher test scores. So a lot of benefits, although I will say when I was looking through the research, a lot of the correlations were positive but weak correlations. So that's something that we maybe kind of wanted to take a closer look at. Just how significant those benefits really are to the students, and then also, how much we see some of those issues as being concerns in our area. Something that we might want to talk about. Obviously, there's lots of difficulties. We visited this topic a couple of times in the past, and I was able to look back at 2000 surveys in 2008, which I gave you some data there. It does tend in the research to correlate to some of the difficulties that came up in our conversations. The difficulties that prevent districts from moving the times later appear to be problems with transportation, bus schedules, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the effects that we might see here in our district if we make changes. We know that students are very busy after school with both sports and jobs, so when you push back the school day, there is concern that that would affect people's ability to get to sports and to get to their jobs, or that they might have to leave school earlier, miss more class time if they're leaving for away events, that sort of thing. And then potentially a child care issue if parents have to leave early in the morning and there's no one to watch their students until their school starts. Certainly the perceptions among the adults, we saw some survey data where we could see how people felt about moving the day. They were able to get a lot of surveys back, which was really interesting to see back in 2008. They were able to hear from certificated and classified staff as well as parents from the high school, the middle school, and the elementary schools. And it was different, although overwhelmingly I think you can see that the majority of people voted to keep the time the same. There was 3 choices that they could have. Keep the times the same, move everything by 20 minutes, or move everything by 50 minutes. And certainly a little more favorable. Obviously, the most favorable was keeping it the same. We had some, some interest in moving 20 minutes, and then moving 50 minutes was very unfavorable, as you can see. I think that, as I look, transportation is something to, I think, look at a little bit. I did have a conversation with Cindy Sloan about the effect. When I was talking to her, I was just looking at what SB 328 would affect, which is just the middle school and the high school. So we talked a little bit about what effect that would have. And she explained that to do the entire East End run, it takes about 45 minutes. So if you kept elementary schools the same, the last drop-offs are at about 8:10 at Topa Topa and Miramani. So you'd have to then factor in a 45-minute route from 8:10, which would mean that your Matilaha or Nordhoff, if you dropped off there first, the first start time at the middle or high school would have to be 8:55, and then the next school at 9 o'clock. So if we were looking at just changing the middle school and high school, the earliest possible start time would be 8:55 at either the middle school or the high school. There was a benefit to that. If we did drastically change the day that much, the students would get out later, closer to 4 o'clock, and currently they can't do a pickup of Nordhoff students because of the schedule, so they would actually be able to pick Nordhoff students up again in the afternoon, so I thought that was interesting. It's also interesting to note that it would not affect their ability to transport athletes to sporting events. That has more to do with the number of drivers they have available to do that, not the schedules. So it wouldn't affect their ability to help transport our athletes out of off to their games. There's other scenarios that could be looked at here, of course. I didn't really mention what it would look like if we just moved all the schools, transportation-wise. If you just moved everything by 20 minutes, it would just be the same. Every school would be affected by 20 minutes, but we'd not have to do a second route through the East End and West End. And then there's other scenarios as well. If we're interested in giving students longer to sleep in, we could look at things like taking away the snack at the secondary level, for example. When I was at Simi High School, they didn't have a snack period. So we could take out snack and start the day later with that sort of a change, as well as looking at right now how we have our early release time for collaboration days. 1 day a week, instead of releasing or dismissing early, they could come in late. So we could certainly talk about all sorts of scenarios that would help at least boost the amount of sleep time that the students have in the morning without maybe such a drastic change of changing all the start times. So there's a lot of scenarios we could discuss and information here. So I'll turn it over to you guys if you have any questions or comments.
I guess I'm still stuck. I mean, I can sort of get the concept, but to me, this is kind of like going off daylight savings time. I get an hour, and after I get used to that, I'm still late for work.
Right.
Right. So I'm not understanding the response to the argument that says if they start later, they'll go to bed later, because it's not about start time; it's about the bedtime, and we don't control that, and kids will adjust it. Is there literature about that?
Yeah, because actually at that age, they're not releasing melatonin until 11 p.m. So asking them to go to bed earlier, they actually have to struggle with that. Yeah.
And so it has to do with circadian rhythm and where their best sleep time is. We're telling them to get up when their most productive sleep time is.
Is that
so
like
it's
based
not,
on the sun as opposed to when they went to bed and what their cycle is? Right? Because I'm not understanding. Is there something specific about 11 o'clock? Or is it 12 hours after they got up? Right?
No,
You see what I'm saying? It's
my
like,
understanding is it's not based on when it's more based on their hormonal internal clock than the sun or when they've gone to bed. So readjusting isn't necessarily.
Actually, I think it's the opposite. I think it's like if you say, if I go to bed earlier, I can get up earlier, right? If you keep
Over
like
time,
adjusting,
wouldn't
like
you
when you're
adjust to
traveling,
that?
right? But it's the opposite because of daylight, because of the way I mean, it is affected by the external, yeah, that they
That's what I'm
can't,
not getting.
yeah. I mean, we'd have to look it up. And again, I think tonight would be, I mean, because a lot of those discussions, I would, same thing, I have ideas, but I think that would be sort of like the sixth grade study committee. It would be this time zone or time, start time study committee, for all those ideas, because I think there's a lot of positives that these didn't even touch on, which would be important to bring out. I've also heard not only increasing their test scores, but just general grade improvements, also less disciplinary problems at the school. There's a lot of things, so I think it would be important if we as a group right now think it would be interesting to look at, then we could have a committee and we could bring all those things and we could talk to the community, we could have community come forward. I mean, to me, this 2008 survey means nothing. That was 10 years ago. You have a whole different group of children and parents, and the way we're parenting is different than we did 10 years ago, and the study.
Well, I would argue that the research wasn't really out there 10 years ago when you were surveying those parents.
Right.
So their response wasn't necessarily it was based on their convenience rather than.
And as we know, only bankers like change.
I would think that by shifting things later, we might get more parental availability to help drive students for away events. If the games are later, then maybe they're off of work already, where if it's earlier, they wouldn't be off of work. I don't know. We would need to look at the time. If it's a difference between 3 and 3:30, then it probably doesn't make any difference. And the same in the morning. I mean, there was talk about the works having to find babysitters or somebody for work schedules, but it seems to me that if we moved it back a little bit, more of the day is covered by work. If they're starting at 8:30, than if they start at 7:30.
I think it's the high school kids who are babysitting younger brothers and sisters.
But not in the morning, because
Right.
the high schoolers are already gone.
Right.
By the time the younger kids.
Well,
So I
and if
thought
you
it
start
was-
the high school later, having trouble getting them to school, or having, high school students are
Well, it
not
sounded like
babysitting.
childcare was.
Well, I think potentially, like if you're looking at seventh graders,
Right.
a parent might be concerned leaving their child at home while they run off to work to make sure that child gets up and does what they're supposed to do and gets themselves ready. So I think it's more the kids on the younger end of the spectrum.
Right,
And if you
that's
did
right.
move elementary school later to a later start time, that would definitely present a childcare issue for sure.
The only
You're right.
elementary, just looking at the, in terms of the bus schedule, it would be San Antonio. Because Miners, was it Miners Oaks that has the early start? Miners Oaks, but that bus is not the same bus. Oh yeah, I guess it is. They do the west side and then go to Miners Oaks and then drop at Nordoff? No. The bus that drops at Matilaha and at Nordoff.
That's all
There's
before.
There's two separate routes. There's a west side route and an east side route. Both will drop at Nordoff, but Myers Oaks only has, I believe it's one student who is transported to Myers Oaks. So the elementary school doesn't have.
So if Miners Oaks stayed at 7:45, but San Antonio changed so that everyone on the east end, same thing they do now, they go to San Antonio, Matilaha, Nordoff. They could do the same thing, but it would be.
I think it's Nordoff, Matilaha, but.
Right.
I only know from personal experience, but out of our 4 kids, 3 didn't have a problem getting up, 1 did. And the problem was more elementary. By the time we got to high school, it wasn't as much of a problem. But
No, we had the flip side at our house where all through the elementary years they got up no problem as soon as they had to get up earlier because we were the 8:15 TOPA starters. Their hormones kicked in and they figured out how to sleep in and now they weren't allowed to. So we had just the opposite problem.
Sure, any parent, just as a parent, I was getting up with my child at 6 a.m. when they were little. And then now, once they hit 13,
They
on a
can
weekend,
sleep till
they'll
noon.
sleep till.
I'm Mike Shanahan. I missed class at 10 a.m. when I had the opportunity. It didn't matter. It was just, it's all relative.
To me, I would be really interested in seeing a current survey
But I don't want a
Because-
survey tomorrow. I want a study that
Right.
presents information and gives the parents a reality check. I also think we need to talk about transportation. We know our budget next year is gonna need some cuts. Is transportation gonna be one of those cuts? And if so, this whole discussion of how this might affect the transportation, well, if we're not gonna be providing buses.
Sure.
I'm not saying that that's a choice, we obviously have to discuss it and vote, but it's on the discussion. So, I think we'd have to have a little more information before we did a survey, because otherwise it's.
Sure, no, having information is helpful. I'm just, if the state mandates it, well then, there's that.
Different conversation.
But otherwise, I mean, my feeling is this is about serving families and students. And regardless of what I think, it's a lot more important what the current families and students are thinking. Having all the information.
Well, and there is a, let's say, that if it passed and the governor passed it, right, an 8:30 start doesn't mean the whole day stays the same and moves to 8:30. You could have classes that are 3 minutes shorter, we have less snack, and so maybe you only get out of school 20 minutes later or something. So, and we do have a public, I guess this is just a discussion item, I can have a public, see, Chuck, are you here? No.
I'm really glad to hear the discussion I just heard, because I was quite upset when I saw this survey in your book. Because I was here in 2008 when the survey happened, and there's the just. Thank you for your survey that gave us the results that you want. Okay, that's what the board told the people that did that survey.
Wait, they said what?
They said thank you, and both people no longer work for the district that did this survey. But they said thank you for giving us results that gave the answer you wanted. So it was not a fair survey. You can see by the numbers there. So I just wanted to make sure, and I appreciate the comments, because all of that is true. I've raised 6 kids, and it's had all the experiences you've already said. And I think transportation is a big piece of this conversation. As you said, financially. But if anybody's seen the front of any of these elementary schools this year, what happened? I mean, it is not the place you want to be. There's a lot of cars in front of any of these schools. And that's another discussion about the flow. But anyhow, just this survey, and I appreciate your comments that got me. That's what I was boiling back here about, is that I was here when this happened, and I was so upset then because it wasn't an honest discussion. And just by the numbers of people surveyed there, you could see that. I mean, I've got 160 classified employees, and they're showing 246 people were surveyed. Okay. But as a parent with 6 kids, I've got two boys that did the 0 period on their own free will to take those shop classes, and to this day they still have that discipline, and they're still up at 5:36 in the morning. That's who they are, as you pointed out, they're kids. But if you have that core period of 4 classes that starts at 8:30, and the kids are doing sports late in the evening, that's a class. If the kids are doing something else, they have other options. But you have your core at that 8:30 in the morning. My kids are all up here. They had the hormone experiences. They needed that rest. Okay, not everybody's kids are like that. So I appreciate, as you said, it is a family issue. And this survey being in this document just got me, because I was here and I've experienced it. My kids are all graduated now. Transportation was entirely different then. Okay, and we're all seeing the school. I think it's pretty rough. Okay, so that's the next issue that we can discuss with this. And one of the things I see addressing it is the after-school programs that are at the elementary schools because of the different let-out times and the parent fill-in gaps. So you're getting more participation that way, that 15, 20 minutes or hour, whatever it is. I think Miramani has 3 let-out times just because of the traffic they have there. I think that's what's happening.
Yeah, why do they have all those?
I don't know that it was for the transportation piece. I know that it's.
No, not transportation, but just the amount of kids there.
Mm-hmm. I know that Catherine says that it definitely benefited that, but I believe they did that to provide intervention for the students.
Thank you.
Another thing.
Well, so 1st through 3rd grade doesn't require as many instructional minutes as 4th through 6th, so we can let our 1st through 3rd graders go home a little bit earlier in that sense, because they need less instructional minutes for the year. and then she's able to keep first through third graders at Miramani and provide them intervention. So she keeps them there until the 4th through 6th graders get out at 2:50. So
Are you
some
saying
kids
the
go
whole
home.
class or just the ones that she
The ones that
thinks
need it?
need some intervention?
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
It may not be a major issue, but a nice transition to a later thing on our agenda is whether this would impact the heating and cooling costs. Because, I mean, it's the summer, the kids usually aren't in school, but we still do have September, which is a hot month,
Mm-hmm.
and late spring is hot. But maybe we save money in the winter by not having to heat in the morning. So, yeah.
We can try to work her numbers to that.
This is just an information item, it's not a voting item, but just to sort of get a sense of, does this board feel we should discuss it again? That we should get together a group, a study group? I mean, how do we move from here? What would be your recommendation?
I think if we're feeling a general consensus that you would like us to bring together an ad hoc committee to look at this topic and to really try to get some of, dive deeper into this research, understand, more of those details and be able to convey that to each of the school sites, we can certainly do that.
Any idea how, like, the 6th grade committee I loved it because it was a ton of people. Like, why did we just say anybody can come? Or
I'm not familiar with how that was prior to my time.
I was on that committee.
So there was actually committee members, but then there was just.
Well, there was so much interest, is my memory. There was so much interest that people came regardless of whether they were on the committee. And so we had the committee around the table, but we also had an audience that after a couple of sessions, the audience just participated as much as the committee did. And kind of organically.
It's very different than the
happened that way.
7-Eleven committee, which
Very
nobody
different.
came to until
Right.
they were voting.
And we made sure, my understanding, that that there was a mix of teachers and parents from each school site, and we had key teachers, so some of the key Matilaha teachers and 6th grade teachers, not all 6th grade teachers, but several. So I think Hank kind of asked people, and some people volunteered to be on the committee, and balanced it that way.
To clarify, the distinction though with 7-Eleven committees, again, the entire reason they're called that is it's a statutorily defined committee that must take place when dealing with the possibility of surplus property, and you can have no more than 11 members on the committee. So you are restricted by Ed Code on the number of committee members, whereas a committee that's looking at potentially just a shift of 6th grade or this sort of start time discussion is not actually defined by Ed Code. It would just be a body that we would use to help gather more information, help to inform the board on an ultimate decision. So we would be free to have the committee made up of whatever size group or constituencies we'd like.
And my memory of that committee, were you?
I was
you
not
were
on the
there,
committee, but I
you
came
were
to
part
all
of the audience.
yeah.
And so did you send in anything to Hank? Maybe that was the difference. The committee members were all asked to write to Hank with their recommendation, and that's where the vote and the final presentation.
Right, no, I was not part of that.
Okay, so that was the difference, I guess, because if you were in the room, it was kind of a free-for-all, but I guess only committee members gave their vote. So.
But I think as a audience member, it was really. I mean, my children were already in 7th grade. My youngest was in 7th grade, I think, at the time, so it wasn't going to affect me. But I think it was just very informative for the it wasn't just there were so many people who got information and so many people who, we were really allowed to speak. You weren't given, you didn't have to fill out, you just said, I have a question, and
right.
I think that was really. And that's why, well, no, I guess it was just the committee that came back and said, what is it, 9 out of 10 or 12 out of 13 said, if we could afford it, we should do it. But I even got a sense from the audience that they had the same feeling, even though there was, you know, a couple people who were adamantly against it when they first started coming. They weren't as upset. They still didn't like the idea, but they weren't that upset about it.
Some of their reasonings behind it.
Yeah, and I think that would make a difference in this situation too. It's like, well, I'd love it to stay that way, but I understand why they're changing it, and I could try to work, I can make it, I'll have to make it work for my family. And then again, as we've all experienced, when you go through a change, a lot of times it's like, oh, that wasn't as awful as I thought it was gonna be. So I would love to see a steady group.
I would really appreciate more research information, because I think it would be interesting to know at what age the sleep patterns change. Are we talking from grade 1 or are we talking junior high? Because there might be an ability to do a more focused change that might sort of mitigate some of the drawbacks. I don't know.
And it's a good point. Does it have to do with the sun? I mean, it's not the clock, right? Because we have daylight savings time. If I could vote on anything, it'd be to not change that. Let's just stick with the time and go with it. I don't care which one. But you know, since this is all we have jurisdiction over, maybe we should put a little more thought into it than they did.
Well, I'm certainly hearing that it seems that there's at least interest in us continuing to walk down this path. That was really why we brought this topic up. You know, Shelley, you brought it up as a potential future action or future agenda item. We wanted to lay out, you know, a very broad overview of where this topic has been in the district historically, you know, what we're seeing the research say now. And so I'm hearing that, you know, at minimum, this issue shouldn't be dying tonight, that we do want to, you know, get some more research and really start involving potentially some more people in the conversation.
And I think it would be important to, I mean, one of the big concerns obviously is sports. I think the play practice and band stuff, I think all that stuff can be, yeah, people's dinner times are going to have to change, but I think those events that are local can happen later. It just takes some adjusting to, but I think you know, it's going to take our athletic coordinator or whatever calling and saying, we're not going to make 4 o'clock games anymore. We need 5 o'clock games.
Well, I'd be curious as to how the, you know, Thatcher and Villanova both have later start times. So, and they're in some of the same.
And they do that. I mean, they played a team on a Saturday that couldn't get in their buses and come here until the sunset because they were, you know, a practicing Jewish school. So coaches call each other all the time and say, you know, can we change the date? You know, the weather, there's a storm coming in, let's move the game to Saturday. I don't think, you know, saying as a general rule, we need, and it's not football, because football games are at 7 o'clock at night on a Friday, but there's,
well, keep in mind though, it's JV at 4, and when we play teams like Torrance or Paso Robles or Lompoc like we did last year, then it really is a matter of, you know, to get to a 4 o'clock game, you're leaving early.
Right. And those are the things that we're going to have to reach out and say, you know. Now, obviously, if the state were to pass it, it'd be easy because everyone would
right,
need to go.
Precisely. Exactly.
But,
yeah. All right, we have some clear guidance to keep the conversation going, do more research, and start bringing some more people to the table.
I'm thinking of just going through the resolutions and maybe taking a short break if anyone needs it for a bathroom. Does that sound? Okay. 7.1, resolution for reduction of classified position. Or any discussion needed, or just a motion?
I'll move to approve the resolution.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed.
Andy, just a question. This is actually going to happen. It's not prophylactic.
Correct. This will be after today. The employee is already aware this is coming to you tonight. Based on this action, they'll have 60 days notice from tomorrow, and it'll become effective. Yep.
7.3.1, in recognition of September 17th as Constitution Day and Citizenship Day, we are asking to approve a resolution in recognition of these days. we all got copies of some of the things that our schools are doing.
I'll move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Sorry, I have to say aye. 7.3.2, recognition of Hispanic Heritage Month. Last year, we had the Javier's group come do a dance for us, so that was wonderful, and we'll continue to have some things are happening at the schools, some books that they're reading and sharing it, so we are asked to approve a resolution in recognition of Hispanic Heritage Month.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. And as we discussed earlier, a resolution in recognition of Parent-Teacher Organization Membership Month. Join your local PTA. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. 7.3.4, Resolution 17-18-6, sufficiency of textbooks or instructional materials. The board is asked to hold a public hearing, so I need to open a public hearing. Does anyone wish to speak on the,
We actually have it moved and
oh, I have to have a movement. I have to have
I'll
someone move.
move to open a public hearing.
Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. So now we will open. Does anyone wish to speak on textbooks? Okay, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Close the public hearing.
And a second? Mike seconds. All those in favor? Aye. None opposed. So we're closing that topic. And now the action item is to actually approve the resolution that we do have sufficient textbooks and instructional materials. I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. 7.4.1, Resolution 17-1807, adoption of the 16-17 actual and 17-18 estimated gain limits action. Are there any questions? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll move to approve.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Actually, so we,
Come back for this.
shall we come back to this? Okay, let's take literally like a 9-minute break, so we're back at 7:30. Let's take a short break, and we'll come back. Okay, thank you, welcome back.
There's nothing I can do for you, my friend.
Gotta love Ella.
I drove to school this morning.
We're gonna start on 7.4.2, which is our, excuse me, unaudited actuals. I actually thought I'd just mention to Andy this morning to ask you guys if you had some questions that you wanted to publicly ask, because I did have two that I asked and got my answers to. I didn't know if you had the opportunity or just because it was informative for me to get my own answers. I mean, this can be just pro forma, but if there's anything that stands out to you.
Yeah, I didn't see anything different than what we've talked about previously, right? I mean, this
right. The only difference was not substance, but rather actually credit to Patty for this is her first time closing the books for us. You know, again, she just started last year, so great job, Patty. This was the first time that we actually fully complied with one of the audit requirements. In the past, we typically wait for the auditors to actually be the ones to step in and do what's called a GASB 68 requirement for an audit adjustment based on our unfunded liability for STRS. And so if you notice, you'll see the only significant change.
We call it the Great Gatsby.
Right, yes, that's right. If you notice, you'll see on the revenue side, something that does look very out of whack otherwise.
Page 3 of 4?
Page 2 of 4, about 2/3 of the way down the column, you'll see that GASB 68 STRS on behalf listed. So it's the second one from the bottom within the other state sources section. You'll see we had nothing budgeted there at revision 3, but then there was an increase of $794,000. That was not new revenue. That was not new revenue. It was simply, again, book adjustment. You'll see that there's a corresponding increase in expenditures on the STRS side on the next page, page 3 of 4. of $781,000. So what the state is trying to do is, and this law was passed just a few years ago. Again, we were not out of compliance previously, but this is a better practice. And again, Patty was the one that realized that this was the best practice to do it at this point rather than waiting until the transition from unaudited to actual audited. And so the state is just trying to make sure that districts and local entities realize just how significant of an issue STRS and PERS unfunded liabilities really are. And so they are wanting us to capture what would be the appropriate share of the district's portion for the unfunded liability, or the gap between the current principal balance on STRS, which is approximately 70% of the promised commitment. And so they're saying if we actually had to pick up that gap, that would be how much we'd have to be paying. However, we're not doing that, and so again, this really is simply just a
Where's the
phantom book entry. If you look on STRS. So that would be about a third of the way down the page.
781, got it.
Exactly. So the reason it doesn't perfectly match is because there was, in fact, actually legitimate budget changes of about $10,000 between those two amounts, and that was because of some changes in, reduced personnel expenditures up above on the special ed side.
Yeah, when we refer to unfunded liabilities in the context of STRS, that's program-wide, right? We as a district don't have any
That's absolutely
particular
right.
unfunded.
That's exactly
We're
right.
just saying we're floating in this boat that's got a lot of
That's exactly correct.
a lot of debts to pay, and hopefully it'll make it across.
Right. That's right. Exactly. So that's the only change. And so if you look at the final page, page 4 of 4, or I'm sorry, actually, if you just look at the bottom of page 3 of 4, it looks like our expenditures actually have gone up since third interim revision. They have not increased. The only reason it looks like that is because of that STRS increase. If it were not for that 700,000 plus increase, we'd actually have seen a reduction in expenditure this year. As it stands, though, the way that all those changes play out is ultimately very good news. We have $194,000 in additional ending fund balance, that unappropriated ending fund balance that we did not have recorded at third interim. So that goes straight to the bottom line to help us start the 17-18 fiscal year in a healthier position.
And in terms of that unfunded liability, I'm shocked that it's so little, in a sense. $781,000 would be our share as a school district of the overall STRS unfunded liability.
Hey, correct me if I'm
Based
wrong,
on
but I believe
actuarial?
that's based on an assumed pay-as-you-go model, correct? That wouldn't actually be what would be sufficient to bridge the full gap. What it's saying is that just this year's deficit, or this year's gap, that would have been what it is. Instead, what they're doing is taking from the future promises to pay that gap now. But
it's not an actuarial assessment of the entire solvency, expected solvency, given all the claims against it.
And it's based on 2 years prior STRS expense for the district.
Got
So
it.
it's not even this year, it's 2 years prior.
Got it. Although they're doing a lot better with the stock market, right? I mean, did they do like 10% or something?
Right, that's true.
Better.
So it really is just a mathematical
completely phantom,
exercise
right.
that doesn't really help us.
Exactly.
Except to notice that, boy, if they
It's a
ever
good
call
thing we
that.
didn't have to pay.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
It's like companies when they take the expense for stock options. It's just a theoretical expense.
Questions? Do I have a motion to approve the unaudited actuals financial report?
I'll move to approve with a kudos. It's a new thing I'm adding.
I'll second with the kudos.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. 7.4.3, Capital Fund, Facilities Funds Annual Report. Oh, this is just information item. Got it, action item. Oh, yes, you wanted to talk about how we're planning to use that fund?
Well, yeah, I'll just point out for the public, we've talked about this as a board before, but we do collect developer fees still. The rates are listed here for residential and commercial. We really have not been spending those funds for the past few years in anticipation of really waiting until we had a broader facility plan in conjunction with Measure J. And so we have a pretty robust balance of $1 million. We are hopeful that the climate tech proposal moving forward would be utilizing some of these funds as well. So The idea with developer fees is that it's to fund the expense that would not have otherwise been incurred but for the development. We know that we're in declining enrollment, so we can't, not in the same position that some districts who collect developer fees are having to actually build new space. What we're having to do is actually maintain spaces that perhaps otherwise would have been, wings of classrooms or individual classrooms that otherwise would be closed. And so, very appropriate use for that purpose. It can only be used though for major replacement of systems or actual modernization, significant upgrades as opposed to basic deferred maintenance or otherwise, routine maintenance. So we're not able to fund the repair of a HVAC out of this system or out of this funding source, but we're able to fund the full replacement of an HVAC system out of this funding source. So it will be part of the funds that will be utilized for the HVAC replacement across the district.
Andy, I think, maybe this is one of those comments for when we're talking about future agenda items, but I do think it's high time we dig into this issue. I remember it was probably 2 years ago that it came up. We had that study
Right before my
done,
arrival.
and we kicked the can down the road. I don't remember where things stand, but I certainly know we never did anything more than kick the can down the road. So we should probably, as I recall, it had to do with increasing the fee, and we had a resolution on it, and then we backed off from that and felt like we didn't have the adequate foundation laid, and it seems to me it's something we should, as a board, deal with.
Yeah, we certainly are not at, the state actually is one that will declare what the rate can be.
Right.
And we are below what the current rate is. I think the rate's up to about $3.60 or so. So we have foregone the opportunity to be collecting more. And I recall that I think it was about 3 to 6 months before my arrival, discussion took place.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I agree with your characterization of it. Was let's just hold off for now, and we'll deal with it maybe at a later date. So I will.
I don't understand. So we determine these fees. Or the state
The
determines?
state caps what the fee can be. You can identify the fee at any rate below that cap. And so what we did was we had it tied to what the cap was a few years back. Then we just haven't actually. You have to go through. There's technical process of actually going through a report that we used, a local firm that helped us. Wasn't Delinka. It
Somebody
was
like that. One of those.
Dick Candy.
Uh-huh.
And so we used a local firm used a local gentleman to help us with the report. And I think that there was a bit of a dispute as to whether or not we really had justification for increasing the rate at that time. And so I think there were some questions about the report itself, and ultimately I just said, let's hold off for now.
How long did it take us to accumulate this $1 million?
Patty, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that what we see as revenue for this past year is what I've seen for the past, at least since I've been here, is that we really bring in around $160,000 to $200,000 a year in revenue. So this has been.
So if
we
we
spend.
spend,
What's that?
It's been, that's been the
Yeah. There's nothing been unusual recently to drop it.
so if we spend this on AC, that's 10 years worth of savings that we're spending. 10 years worth of accumulation.
We're right, 5 years or so, right? Exactly. Yep.
All right, 2.
We share that as well. Does that mean actually at some point you guys spent the whole thing? Do you know what it was on? Do you know if the district accumulated it and then spent it all?
I
and
don't
has
know.
been accumulating it again. Let's get Bangser on the line. I haven't talked to him in a little while.
I will find out what our spending pattern has been longer term.
Okay, 7.4.4, climate tech. Finally, those poor people waiting 2 hours.
So again, I'll just kind of set the stage for our presenters. Prop 39 was passed about 5 years ago, Green Jobs Energy Act. The idea was to fund energy efficiencies within school districts that had a clear return on investment. So it was both trying to, at that time, we're in the still part, coming out of the recession. It was really trying to help put people to work in green jobs, but also helping school districts ultimately help their operational bottom line by being able to save ongoing energy expenses. We've held off. The funding started 5 years ago. We're in the 5th year now of funding. However, we held off on doing anything until this point because at our funding allocation, just under $600,000, there really wasn't much that we could be doing with the fifth increment each year. So we were only allocated about 125,000, 100 to 125,000 a year. So we didn't have a right to the full allocation until actually until recently, and so this is the time now that we are wanting to develop this plan for the expenditure of these funds. About 6 months ago, we had an RFP go out, and Climate Tech was one of 4 respondents. Ron and I both felt they were the strongest firm, both from the fact that they offered to do for free the initial assessment, so we always appreciate that. But it was also far more so, Ron being able to really tell from the technical side of things, and me being able to tell just from actually now having known Ashley and Amber for nearly 2 years or so, I'd say. We've been talking for a while. And the people who I really trust within education in this state could not more highly recommend them. And so throughout the process, they're an excellent firm, have been very responsive to every request we've had. And so ultimately, they did a full energy assessment of our district, which we'll talk about. They can certainly put together a proposal that would only be for the expenditure of the Prop 39 funds. We do have to have that plan go to the state by the end of this year. January 12th is the deadline to submit that plan. And then the expenditures must quickly follow. But what they really are actually bringing forward, and what I'm in strong support of, is that we take this opportunity to go beyond simply the expenditure of these Prop 39 dollars. They're going to be talking about a plan that has lighting improvements, automation, as well as HVAC. First 2 across district, HVAC at specific targeted sites. And you'll see that, again, both from an operational standpoint, these are one of the opportunities of where Measure J, a one-time funding source, is able to actually help our operational budgets, able to have direct savings to the general fund, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But unfortunately, this topic is very timely with the heat wave that we've had the past week and a half, and we've certainly been reminded, daily of the challenges that we have across the district with our HVAC specifically. And so I'm sure they can talk a little bit about what they saw when they did the site visits and just how old and underpowered the systems are. So this really is, a significant need, and I do believe that Climate Tech is the absolutely right firm to help us be able to have the significant, what amounts to be a $3 million project moving forward. So with that, I'll toss it over to you guys to help us help explain what the process you guys have went through was and what the proposal is.
Thank you, Superintendent Cantwell. Board President Whale, members of the board, Superintendent Cantwell, members of staff, and the Ojai community. We're really excited to be here tonight. This is a special project to us. We really enjoyed having gotten to know all the staff and your facilities and putting together a program that's really going to help to ultimately improve the comfort and safety of your learning environment. Superintendent Cantwell gave an overview of our process to date, but essentially we were selected about 6 months ago through an RFP, and our engineering team, which Dr. Naya heads up, has put together a comprehensive energy conservation program. And the first step to that was putting together a utility analysis to really analyze what you're currently spending. And then all of our engineers went on site and they did a survey of every piece of energy and utility consuming equipment on site to not only see, okay, what are the needs out there that can help be relieved from your deferred maintenance budgets, but also what's going to meet the guidelines for Proposition 39, which is the state grant funding. So tonight we'll share that scope of work that we've been collaborating with Ron and Superintendent Cantwell.
Maybe just one.
A scope of work that really addresses the needs of your sites. Like I said, ultimately the goal of the program is to improve the comfort of the learning environment, and by upgrading these antiquated pieces of equipment and energy inefficient, energy infrastructure that you have, it's going to reduce the district's deferred maintenance needs and ultimately reduce operating expenditures on your utility bills and M&O expenses. Also, this is being properly sequenced in a thoughtful way. We know that there is an interest of the community to look at renewables or solar generation potentially down the line. And there's a stacking order that's recommended by the Energy Commission and the state and just industry standards to, before going into a generation project, to really make sure that the energy consumption on your existing infrastructure is as efficient as possible. And the goal and the reason for doing that is so that the solar or any type of renewable system down the line can be sized properly to an efficient use of utility expenditures rather than unnecessary consumption.
Alright,
I have a quick question about that. Do you mind
Sure.
questions? And are the rules for public agencies the same as like for homeowners? Like, for example, if you put a solar system on your house, you can't make it any bigger than the amount of electricity that you use.
that's true, and it's not really a rule, but it's more of a concept that like a guideline of, like, for example, this is what your utility analysis is. This is what you are currently spending.
I'm not sure. I was told that it was a law. Maybe I was wrong about home, but we could theoretically do as much power as we want.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but again, the thing is, I mean, here's your utility bill. Same thing for a homeowner. There's a certain amount that the homeowner pays annually for the electricity consumption at his particular residence. You could size the solar. If somebody has money, they could say, like, I'm going to size it more than what I really need, and then try to sell the rest back to Southern California Edison or whoever the utility company is. The caveat to that is you can use as much as you want, but you basically are using electricity round the clock or even during nighttime when the sun doesn't shine. So you still have to pay the utility a certain amount of money. Now you're going to be oversizing the system, so you're trying to overproduce during the daytime, and again, depending on the season, summer, winter, you will have different.
Right. Sorry, I've taken us off
Sure.
track.
No, but
you need
So
to
generally,
stay
though,
on track.
generally what you pay to actually generate a kilowatt is going to be far greater than what the utility is going to give you to sell it back into the grid. So it's just not cost effective when you're looking at the bottom line.
Right.
That's the simple way to look at it.
So just going back to your utility analysis, the way we started is first look at what you guys are spending before we start an audit. So this is just a snapshot of that. The bottom half shows the monthly expenditure district-wise, what it was spending. So you really see it shoot up in around August, September when school starts, when everybody comes in. That's when you use your hot, use your most air conditioning, your lighting. So you really have high expenditure, and then it tapers down as the seasons change. The top part is a metric of how dollars per square foot, how does the district use utility expenditures, both gas and electric, across different schools, and they range from 1.84 at San Antonio all the way down to the high at 0.84.
Why such a disparate?
So that's a good question. So it really depends on the type of units at different schools. So when we surveyed, we did find you have older units in certain schools, older lighting systems, the way they operate, the hours of operation on lighting versus mechanical are different at different schools.
The rate structure.
The rate structure that the utility has you on particular sites is dependent on the load, is different for each. All of that plays a role into it. So that's how we found. So.
The scope of work is built into three main categories. And so building automation systems, and we'll go into each one with a little bit more detail. Building automation is really focused on the thermostats on the wall and a front-end system that allows your M&O staff to be able to efficiently control the heating and cooling set points and put together a schedule so that they're not having to go site to site to site to fix a problem or troubleshoot an issue or address a comfort complaint. They could do it from a remote location, remote from any device. It's a Wi-Fi based system. That helps to prolong the use and the longevity of your HVAC units when temperatures aren't running to extreme temperatures. And lighting, that's interior and exterior, and then mechanical, it's just aging HVAC systems. We focused on the three main priority sites based on input from staff to really focus on what's going to be the greatest long-term use and investment for the district.
So as Ashley mentioned, the building automation system, that's the heart of your mechanical HVAC heating and cooling systems. The picture on the left-hand side is a typical system that we have seen in most of the control systems that you guys have right now across the district is a combination of manual thermostats or programmable thermostats. So in the case of manual thermostats, if somebody towards the end of the day really wants to turn it all the way on and forgets to turn it off, it would probably basically be running till the next time somebody comes in. The other side, the new system is actually going to be, as you said, you can monitor it remotely, control it remotely on any web browser, and actually be able to change temperatures as well as schedules on the fly and make sure everything's turned off and things are supposed to be done.
So in addition to doing it by looking at it, you can automatically set it.
Correct.
You can automatically set it, and you can also view if something's going to change.
The real goal here is not so much to take away control of the learning environment. Our teachers, the teachers in different office spaces will still have range within a certain predefined area, maybe plus or minus 2, whatever district standards the district would like to set. But the goal and what this will allow the district to do is just make sure units aren't running when rooms are unoccupied, and there's going to be tremendous savings that can be generated from that.
This is the lighting option. So lighting, as stated, you're doing both interior as well as all the classrooms, the NPRs, as well as all the exterior mounted fixtures. There will be a total of 4,400 light fixtures throughout the district that will be converted to the latest state-of-the-art LED technology.
So let me ask you, like in a room like this, are you just changing the bulbs to LED or are you changing the whole unit?
So it really depends. In certain places where we have fixtures that, like a fixture like this, that has a older style ballast that controls the lights, we'll be replacing it with a completely new fixture. In certain cases where they are electronic ballast and they could be utilized, we are just replacing LEDs with those tubes with LED tubes. And this is based on a couple of factors. A, the cost. B, the cost of electricity being at a particular school. C, depending on how many fixtures you touch, Title 24, which is a energy efficiency code in California that governs all commercial buildings, does take in, which adds to further cost. So it really is a cost to savings benefit ratio that we look at, but in the end, all of them will get upgraded.
That's pretty amazing.
So the last one is mechanical units. Again, the 3 sites that I'm getting, mechanical units, Cooper, Elementary, Junior High, and North High School. Again, it's based on the age of these units and those sites. There are around 65 units that will be in place. These vary from anywhere between 20 to 25, more than 25 years old in some cases, units that are still in place. And these will be replaced with the state-of-the-art high efficiency 16 rated units.
Here's a financial overview of the program. Their turnkey project from start to finish is $2.9 million. And the funding sources that would be utilized would be, like we mentioned, the funding, the grant funding from the state, which is Proposition 39. We would apply for that on the district's behalf, and the district would be receiving, by the time your plan is approved, it would be 4 years, and then the final 5th year would come in February. So it's within the next few months after it would get approved. And then the district's contribution is $2.3 million. And the net impact to the general fund is what, again, we mentioned is from more efficient equipment, less utility consumption, less M&O expense. That's going to have an impact on the general fund. So just in year 1, the net savings would be about $175,000 almost. And the net general fund relief over the first 5 years of the program is $850,000. Tonight, we're here to present information to the board and gather input, and then if the district is interested in having us move forward to come back with an action item, the next step would be to post a public hearing notice 2 weeks before the action date. That's just standard for any type of energy conservation program that a district wants to approve. There's a public hearing, and a public hearing notice needs to be posted 2 weeks before. So the action item, we would be ready as early as October if staff wanted us to come then. And so after, if we were fortunate enough to gain your approval to move forward, what we would do is do all the final design and engineering, get your application approved through the state, and begin mobilizing. And the whole construction would take anywhere from about 8 to 12 months. So a lot of this work, though, in terms of the HVAC units, you're going to see a lot of that take place over break. but then lighting, retrofits, and a lot of the other work would take place after hours. And just a little bit about our firm, all we do is energy retrofit projects in K-12 and education markets and customers. So our project management team specializes in making sure that these type of improvements can be done without an impact to the learning environment, and knowing how schools operate and making sure that there's a proper communication plan set up with each site, principals and teachers, and thoroughly communicating through all steps of it to make sure there's no impact to the learning environment. Because a lot of this work gets done throughout the year, over after hours and on the weekends. That
You have
concludes our
nighttime
presentation.
employees, so they prefer the nights.
I have a question. You touched on this briefly, but I wonder if you could speak to it a little bit more.
Sure.
I understand Matilaha and Nordhoff, right, they're central schools. All of our folks go through those ultimately. But I'm curious to know a little bit more about TOPA and why we sort of all the elementaries, we focused on TOPA.
That was actually my direction. So, again, this is a three separate projects here. The building or the lighting, which we're looking at doing across the entire district. If we're going to be doing all three of these phases of the lighting, automation, and HVAC across the entire district, this would turn into a $6 to $7 million scope and project. And so, part of it was about having a manageable scope on the front end. A major part of it was knowing that Topa is our third largest, well, second or third, depending on the year, largest school, and so it was where we felt there was the most bang for the buck. Condition of those units compared to some of the other units, when we looked across the elementary schools, they were among the worst conditions, so that was also a factor. And frankly, I think that they provide tremendous value across the board, but I think that even just the brief part they mentioned about just the level of detail for the 4,400 bulbs and ballasts that will be touched, that's where I see Climatech's greatest value on this scope of project. HVAC, I think that they're going to provide tremendous value on this initial phase of getting a few of our schools, complete replacements done, because Ron already is working on about 10 other projects for next summer, and that's not necessarily his expertise at this time. But I'm very confident that Ron's going to be learning quite a bit from Climatech and the team, and so ideally what I'd like to see is HVAC replacements across the district, but something that Ron's able to take lead on potentially on stage 2 or stage 3 of that process. So really that was the rationale for chunking this a little bit more than doing everything at once.
We think there'll be money for the other schools once this is done.
Absolutely. Yeah, HVAC, absolutely.
And so this 2.3 or this 2 million that's our Measure J.
Well, it's going to be a combination of Measure J and the developer fees that we mentioned earlier. Exactly. Okay. So it will not be all Measure J.
I see.
So the full million of the developer fees would go into this?
The full million will ultimately go into HVAC across the district. I haven't actually determined exactly the way that we're going to allocate them between them. It's again going to be an analysis based on the utilization of each site and what
You have to actually split that
right.
1
So
million
exactly,
everywhere. You can't
well,
spend it.
we can't say that because we would still have, regardless of the developments taking place in the second dwelling units or the other units that have generated those revenues. We can't possibly say that Nordhoff would have been closed but for those additional developments. We'd still be operating a high school, and so we can't have all the developer fees go to a single aspect of a single site. Maybe there'd be an argument at the elementary school level, but I'll just avoid that one. Instead, say that we can say with certainty that we'd have fewer classrooms in use at each of the sites, but for that, and so that's why we'll allocate out some prorated portion based on an analysis. But ultimately, it's fairly technical as far as the way that that'll be allocated. But ultimately, all $1 million will be spent on the purpose between the sites.
And just to clarify, at least the HVAC portion, it's not a question of whether we need to do it or don't need to do it. The units are super old and failing.
That's correct. That's absolutely
and we've even had some fail this week.
That's right. Right. Our M&O team were very busy last week with putting out fires the past 2 weeks.
We'll have a teacher strike on our hands.
Andy, I've been really fixated on the competitive procurement process.
Mm-hmm.
So now this PowerPoint begins by saying there was a competitive procurement process, but not as to this work, right? Just as to the audit.
Correct.
So we sent out an RFP for someone to do an audit, and Climate Tech said they would do it for free. I assume that made them the preferred choice. But now we're talking about $2.9 million worth of work. What have we done to assure ourselves that's a competitive price?
So we have gotten a full breakdown of every piece of equipment that will be installed, every the bulbs and where, and so Ron and I both have taken a look at what they're actually putting the numbers to on the value there, and we absolutely see this very much in line with what I've heard from other districts, what they've been doing, as well as what we personally have seen. Just last week we signed a PO on 2 HVAC units at Matilaha, and this is coming at a lower price than what those were ended up being bid at for a single project. So we absolutely have basis based on both Ron's industry knowledge of these units, as well as what we've actually personally seen from recent projects.
Could you share with us those other projects, and also what you'd expect to get some savings through scale, right?
Sure.
I mean, if I hired a guy to come and put 1 unit in my house, I wouldn't expect to spend as much as if I were going to get 200 units put into a big
of course.
industrial complex.
Certainly.
So, that's my whole thing. It's just I recognize how enthusiastic you are. You guys have made an impressive presentation, no question. I'm a fiduciary for a limited amount of money, and I just want to make sure we're not not missing an opportunity to get a better deal.
Just one note on the RFP process. So it was the RFP process itself that we responded to was for a comprehensive program that's done in 2 steps. The first step is the audit, and when these projects are procured, that's how they go about it. There's an initial investment price that you have to quote based on how much you're going to charge to do the plan. And then there may be some questions about, okay, what's your approach to pricing on the implementation side? And then generally in the implementation side is where there's the vetting process with the price breakouts and all that. So the RFP process itself was for design and implementation, not just a plan, just to be clear.
And is there an approach to pricing you guys have that you want to share with us?
Sure. We have a profit fee that's charged on a turnkey program, and that's 6.5%. We actually worked with the district and have actually discounted that.
I saw that back out was just a discount.
Yeah, it was just a discount, and just candidly, I've been with the company almost 7 years. I've never seen that done. Superintendent Cantwell worked very closely with us to make sure that as much value as possible was being delivered for the district for our program. Our president is actually from Ventura County, and so I think for whatever reason this was an important project to him. So that was the first time I've ever seen our profit fee actually reduced or negotiated. Generally, that's the price.
And I think you also, Andy, said that you had felt it was important to know that the company that we chose had some good review or some background in this, or could handle the project and wouldn't end up in a situation where it was taking us longer. It was becoming more expensive. It was
right.
I mean, that was one of your
right. Absolutely. Again, we don't have the internal capacity at this time to oversee anything near this scale and scope, and so I do believe the process we've gone through has been appropriate. I also am extremely appreciative of the willingness that the Climate Tech ultimately had in working with us on the price, and again ultimately finding $125,000 in savings, effectively dropping their markup or their profit from 6.5% down to 2% on the project. I did call around to a colleague on the other side of the county, and he was shocked to hear that. That is, I don't believe that we're just simply hearing that from Ashley, that I think that we did get a good value there. And so really it comes down to, what would be lost by holding off. Well, one, we actually, from a time standpoint, don't have the ability to hold off beyond January 12th or we lose Prop 39. So we do need to move forward at minimum on the Prop 39 project. We also know that, as we've talked about, we do have the time restraints around the expenditure or the commitment of the Measure J dollars having $6 million committed by April. So I think we do have a little bit of a time constraint, but I also don't feel this is being rushed or prematurely done simply because of time constraints. I do believe that we've vetted and have confidence in this project being having a single group that's able to take care of all these steps as opposed to having, right, potentially 4 separate contractors or more coming in, and ultimately the challenges that can come from that level of coordination. I think that this is the right project.
That said, I just want to make it clear that we all understand this. We're spending 10%, give or take, of Measure J in this case without knowing what somebody else would charge us to do the same work. That's true. That's a fact.
But they did present to the COC committee, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what did any of them say? Anything?
Certainly, there was concern about the process as far as not having the entire, now that we have a proposal and bidding out each individual step of the program. Ron and I know also Dave talked about their knowledge of industry pricing on the per tonnage cost for commercial installation. This is coming in below that. If my memory serves right, I think that the number that was talked about during that meeting was $10,000 to $12,000 on a per tonnage basis. If I did my math right when I looked at this, it was $7,000 to $8,000. So not just by a hair, but by a fair margin. What Dave himself, as well as what Ron talked about, as far as what they see on a per tonnage basis on HVAC, this is coming in very competitive.
Just to add to that, rather than going with one entity and holding them accountable from start to finish for cost and the savings that will be measured from this comprehensive project is huge as compared to going and piecemealing it with offering one school to one contractor or more. So like a mechanical on one school to one contractor, mechanical on second school to a different contractor, lighting is being done by somebody else, the coordination, the cost overruns, and then finally the savings accountability, not to mention the fact that Proposition 39 actually requires to not only submit the energy expenditure plan and get it approved, but also there's a progress report that needs to be done each year till the project's done, and there's a final validation report or measurement or verification or performance assurance report that needs to be submitted to the state to make sure that the savings that will be realized from the project in the energy expenditure plan that was submitted are actually realized. So then it's actually up to the district to really show that those numbers actually come to light as well. Whereas over here, we'll be accountable right from the get-go.
So those other two companies that answered the RFQ, did they have the same capacity to do all that, or would they have been piecemealing?
There were three other firms that respond. 2 did not have the capacity, so they each were charging a flat fee for doing the audit itself, and then they would just be serving as a potential general that would be farming out to many different or other contractors. Neither of them did it. One other firm that responded is a very similar firm to Climatech, and we felt strongly Climatech was the stronger of the two. So it was only 2 that actually responded that did that type of work.
When we're asked to approve whatever we're approving, will it be a contract? Will you bring to us a contract?
Yes, so there will be 2 components. One is the installation agreement, and the installation agreement covers all the terms and conditions of the actual construction, and it's going to have the not to exceed $2.9 million price, and that means no change orders. There's no us coming back and saying, oh, well, there's an existing condition that wasn't accounted for. That's the price. If any of the budgets come in lower, then those savings, of course, will be passed on to the district. But that's a not to exceed maximum.
Will everything be broken out so that, like, for example, on each of the line items, you have a project contingency, which obviously is in anticipation of potential things that you didn't expect to encounter. You've already built it into the price, so the expectation is that those contingencies will occur. But how will we know if they're not needed? Are we being charged on some specific way that we'll see? It's like someone said, I'll charge you for 5 gallons of gas, but I'm going to, I think it will be 5 gallons, but I'll charge you for 6. If I only use 5, it's clear to see if you only use 5. But on a project like this, how do we know when you did or didn't hit your contingency?
So there's a couple different items there. So first is the breakout that we put together. That could be included as an addendum in the contract, no problem. But then actually for invoicing, we're going to set up a standard schedule of values that's going to break up each component for each site. And that has to be agreed upon and blessed with staff, that schedule of values, we're on agreement on it. And then we bill the district for progress payments as we're completing construction. And again, that has to be, approved by staff. And our regular business practice is if any of those budgets come in lower, the contingency is not needed, we can either say, hey, we can give you a credit on your invoice or the whole SOV, or if you want to add a couple more units, then you can do that, and that's all done transparently.
One of the things I'm anticipating is at some point you're going to come across some electrical that will need to be switched out. Maybe, the actual electrical cords will be deteriorated, or maybe there's some rat infestation. Or are you expecting to be doing any changing out of the actual, I don't know what you call it, I think of electrical
in some
wire?
cases there is, yeah.
Is that built in your bid anywhere?
Yeah, the electrical, the scope of work will actually, the installation contract that you mentioned will have all of that written up as to what we do on, or what's included in all the mechanical unit replacements. So we're replacing units, we're demoing the unit, we're recovering electric unit, we are putting new condensate lines, we are putting in new electrical disconnects, wiring up to the unit is all included. So it will clearly delineate all and deal with what's not included. So it would not include a new switchgear. We really need a new switchgear because the existing switchgear is unrelated. Yeah, that's not part of the project. But yeah, with disconnects, wiring up to the unit and all of those.
So what's our next step?
So next step is, this is the proposal. We've certainly gotten a lot of feedback tonight. Is there a desire for this proposal to be modified, or the next step otherwise would be that we would be bringing this back to you in October for board action?
It's interesting because this isn't an action item, so we're just kind of sharing our thoughts.
Right, giving us feedback to refine the ultimate scope of the project. Exactly.
And we can leave if you feel more comfortable
Public
talking
meeting.
about it without us here.
You can watch it
You've
on
heard, you've
YouTube.
heard our worst. It doesn't get any worse.
Okay.
We don't hide anything.
Yeah, I will say that Ron and Andy, you guys have demonstrated your passion about your belief that this is the right direction, and I certainly like to test things out by asking what I think are hard but fair questions. But that said, I think I have confidence in you, and I know we do have to get moving, and so I personally, if there's any question, okay with taking the next step. And I know what we're saying here is take the next step, because otherwise people are going to be wasting time. So I'm okay with that next step.
Thank you.
Although this is not a vote, as Jade said.
Right. I feel the same. I understand that concern, but again, I feel like with what we had choices in the past, what we've seen out of their performance so far, and really when you look at these, that's not as, you look at the number, it's big, but when you look at the breakdown, it's actually not for what we get.
I appreciate Kevin's points. I think they're very well founded. And actually, it's been some of the pushback from the board that has saved us a ton of money on some of the management things. But I think you have experience, and I'm comfortable moving forward.
Yeah, I think given the time pressures, under, in an ideal world, we'd have this out and we'd see if there are other wraparound contractors who can do this for us. But I'm gonna defer to the expertise on our Measure J subcommittee, of which we have significant expertise. And they dig way deeper into it than I get at all, and they were supportive of this. And based on that, I'm comfortable. But I have to agree with Kevin. For transparency and due diligence, I would prefer that we get competitive pricing when the time allows.
I guess I'm last time. I would wholeheartedly agree with everything that you said. I do feel I'm glad that we did vetted and asked us questions, and I appreciate that it went through that first. So I'm comfortable.
Just to be clear, I mean, I was at that meeting, right? Was there a I don't remember like a consensus. Was there a consensus? Maybe I forget things. I forgot that I was only in class 3 days a week.
It seemed a lot longer.
They bumped class
Maybe it's
3
'cause
times
I was there one day.
Yeah, whether you were there or not.
Right. Ron, do you have any differing thoughts to me? My recollection of the meeting was that we had strong support in the project. There was concern over the costs, especially that we exactly how they're making their money as general contractor and the appropriateness of whether or not we have throughput ourselves. And that was really the direction I took on negotiating as hard as I did on the actual management fee.
And I'll say, in fairness, Dave Intner was not, he can be quite, when he wants to be negative, he's clearly negative, and I did not, I was actually somewhat surprised that he seemed pretty good with it. So, not surprised because of anything you guys, I just surprised that because he's just so angry.
He's going to be watching and
surprised
not talk to you.
Kidding, Dave. Because he's a real taskmaster when it comes to these issues that he really knows. So
right, absolutely.
Well, we came prepared, knowing that he was going to be on the committee. Somebody that is a chief architect for SCE, we came prepared, and we were very fortunate to have received the nod from him and the rest of the team. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
very smart. You just exit when there's a nice little moment for fear that there will be more questions.
7.4.5, Measure J update. Sir?
Well, Ron, I'm not even sure actually if there's need for you to give a presentation. We have the latest, on the projects that are still outstanding. As far as the kitchen, we're still anticipating within the next, well, certainly by the end of this month, but within the next week or two. Two for the Topa Topa kitchen. The stage is still right on schedule to be completed before the OEF breakfast. The other projects really have no change. They're right now in the hands of DSA, or where you have the welding and the custom fabrication stage. But otherwise, very little update relative to just 2 weeks ago.
Oh, 7.5.1, update on enrollment figures and individual class sizes.
Well, this is a new agenda item. We haven't previously gone to list level of detail, but this has been a very clear priority.
It's really helpful.
Definitely a clear priority you guys have communicated as far as this level of transparency. At least let's have these numbers available to the public and available to each of you to be able to see. Of course, some of the numbers are not where we'd like them as far as the size of some of these classes, but the overall narrative is that we do see actually among the lowest class sizes that we have in a decade. Certainly in elementary school, we are at the lowest that we've been at in a decade. Matilla and Nordhoff, there are again some classes that are rather large, but on the whole, we're certainly seeing a positive trend from where we've been. So overall, our enrollment, we're down 13 students from the last presentation I gave 2 weeks ago. That is not actually 13 students who have left during that span. It's really the identification of students who had previously left. So it was a matter of, a kid might be an 8th grader with us last year, be planning all along in the summer to go to Villanova, but just never actually notify us properly, and so that we unenroll them from our system. And so I believe of the 13, well, actually I'm very confident of 13 that not a single one of them attended a single day of class over the past 2 weeks. It wasn't a matter of they visited for 2 days and realized that they were pursuing another option. It was a matter of, again, really just reconciling documents that had not been submitted earlier. So
That's 13 in the district.
correct, exactly.
I think one of them did, just so.
Really?
My daughter's class started at 24, it's now at 23. So one of the kids that has left did show up for the first couple of weeks.
At Matilla or?
Toba.
But maybe she went to another school.
No, I moved to Arizona or something.
Okay.
Just throwing it out there.
Are you saying though that they actually had 24 students in the classroom, or it just said
They
24
had
last time?
No, he was
Okay,
there
okay.
and the kids talked to him and,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, because what was more common was that you might see a 24 on this piece of paper, but there was never actually 24 in the room, but
Right,
if
no.
there was, it's
That's
very possible
being
at 1 or 2.
reported by a
Okay.
10-year-old. I can't guarantee.
I would trust the 10-year-old over, my recollection of report. But so again, the bigger narrative is that from our, student enrollment of around 20, mid 2400s, that there was no significant change from just 2 weeks ago, and from where we were last year, we're down, in the mid 30s, about 35 students or so from this time last year.
It's just a question on the elementary level. So I know there's some students who, I don't know how to describe this, but they're not on this teacher's list, but they're like, what's the word, Cheryl, when they're
Special
immersion?
education students,
Yeah,
right. Might have a portion of their day where they're included within the broader, general education population or within the classroom, and I'm sure that both of you can speak to that experience as well. But yes, you're absolutely correct that these numbers at times, it's the number of general ed students in the class, but there are some of the students there in the column, that K6 special ed column that you see next to the total cumulative grade span. Those students are, brought in, included in the primary class.
Where are they listed?
Different parts of the day.
Oh,
they're going to
okay.
be listed along that column, and then there are students that are in these classes down here who are brought in. Yeah, so when you see the enrollment in those STC classes, that those numbers will fluctuate throughout the day. Sometimes some students remain in the STC class the entire day. Some are mainstreamed for a portion of the day.
So these numbers for Matilla and Nordhoff we've never seen before, and so obviously when you look through them, you have some that are major concerns, and I guess there's really no way to solve that unless we hire another teacher.
Right. I mean,
and again, that only helps. Like I can look at the government. It's like, well, that would help the government classes, but that doesn't help the Spanish classes.
And the great challenge with master scheduling is that, other than finding the perfect scenario where you happen to have, one of these classes of 41 or, 42 in the government, unless you're able to actually find someone who had an available prep period who can teach the class during that period, then, if you were to just add, right now you can see government is a class that we consistently have high, second, third, and fourth period. If we were to add a government period, fifth period, that would create a whole havoc of issues, of trying to now rearrange a sufficient number of student schedules to fit them into a new section during a different period. So, it's the easiest fix. What we actually did with one of our English classes, English 11, was we have Mike Krumschmidt who's now coming over and teaching a section there. We were able to largely just split out a large class of 40 plus students into two smaller sections with 20 students or so. We also moved a few from second period to the fifth based on when their free period was. But generally speaking, that doesn't work out very often. Then you don't help any of the other classes. You still have 40, and then you all of a sudden see 2 20s. Whereas, if we had the ability to, back in May with certainty know exactly where the enrollment was, it's possible that we would have evaluated the staffing, a little bit differently. But it is just the challenge of a master schedule of where, there's always a sequence of your impact of classes.
So what happens in May that prevents us from being able to foresee this? That we don't have students enrolled, or we don't know? I mean, is there any knowledge that we could gain in the spring that would help, or it just falls this way in August and we have no choice?
No, it doesn't fall this way in August. We have no choice. But the difference between remember the junior and senior classes are the two main places that we're seeing these challenges, and English and government are the two main places we're seeing it. Each of those classes happen to hover right around that 160 student marker. And so if we were to have 4 sections, if they're at 160, your options are either 3 or 4 sections. I'm sorry, 4 or 5 sections. Option 1 would have you at 40 students if you have 4 sections. Option 2 of 5 sections puts you at 32 students. If you have only 5 or 8 of those students end up going to Chaparral, or have go down to El Camino or go to another location, then all of a sudden now you're running numbers at options of either what could be 29 students per class versus what would be 38. And so part of it was the reality that in a continuing declining enrollment district that we need to be making some tough choices, and not knowing whether or not 160 or what looked like it was going to be 157 would turn into 162 or 152. That's the difference of, again, 2 or 3 students per class. So that was the calculated choice we made. Do I think that we could have potentially foreseen some of these challenges a little bit earlier? Yes, and I think that that part of it could have just been a transition as well, between Nordoff's leadership change as well as our district office leadership changes. That I'm certain that Cheryl will be working more closely with Dave in the future, making sure that both them and Dave's team are looking at these numbers as early as we can, and really making sure that we avoid these conflicts if possible.
So if anyone out there would like to donate $100,000 so we could hire another teacher, give us a call tomorrow.
And I know a lot of these are AP classes, so the other solution would have been to restrict.
Exactly.
But,
No, they're not. These are just the prep classes.
no, but a lot.
Right.
Oh.
You're absolutely correct that
Right.
AP classes are where we do see among the highest class sizes, and exactly it comes down to philosophical discussion of if we have 42 students interested, and we know that naturally a few of them at some point will self-identify as not wanting to be in that class, will likely pull out. Do we on the front end create some sort of hurdle to allowing free access to the class, or do we allow everyone in? At 42 students, there's certainly no option of creating 2 20 student AP classes. So we've taken the choice that the student is willing to put themselves out there and do the work over the summer. If there is summer work and really wants to be in the class, we'd rather allow them into the class and give them that opportunity.
And it's not any consolation for those in the class, but a lot of college courses have hundreds of students.
Right, certainly.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, 7.5.2 board discussion of this is just, they give us names of people who are running, and I don't believe there's, is there actually, I thought there was one, that's why I said put it on the board is asked to discuss the upcoming re-election of the members, because we have to let them know before our next meeting who we're voting for. But I thought there was one where we actually had to make a choice. So am I wrong?
So ultimately, we'll have a representative there. Either it'll be you or
that's
your
what we need
representative.
to,
And so I think
yeah.
that this was just an opportunity for the board to actually give feedback to whoever will actually be casting the vote for this. So
I don't know any of these people. And I don't know how they've impacted my life.
Anybody know? I know last year there was, like Hank knew somebody and recommended a couple of them, but I mean, obviously Kathy Smith, we all know, right? She's
Kathy, which section are we actually voting for? You mentioned
4 and 5. Oh, okay.
So section 4, Greg Barker is a former board member within Moore Park Unified, or at Moore Park Unified. He actually lost re-election this past year in 2016. And I believe he stated that he was not intending to remain on.
Correct.
So I'm not sure of his. Right. For supervisor or super district 5. Richard Candy was a name that we have mentioned recently in this meeting.
Well, his term doesn't expire until the 20th. It's just Richard's.
That's right, yes. And I do not know Richard Duarte. Oh, okay, so I'm sorry. This actually would be more helpful. So Robert Perez, I actually do know quite well from Moore Park Unified. He's been on the Moore Park board since 2014 is when he came on. He's a, as it says here, product of the schools himself, and I believe he has 3 or 4 children in the district right now. Very involved in the Moore Park community, small business owner. Chuck Weiss is the former county superintendent. He's Stan Mantooth's predecessor. He left the county in 2008 to go up to the Bay Area, was county superintendent there, and returned a few years ago and has been a board member with, I believe, the Wainimi district. Yes, Wainimi.
Yes.
Is that possible?
Probably.
I think my
He was-
elementary does.
Oh, really? Yeah, he was county soup, I want to say for at least 18 years or so. I mean,
My whole entire childhood.
yeah, yep. Yeah.
So I apologize, when I got this in the mail, I thought we actually needed to decide, last year we had to actually decide which one are we voting for, but it looks like there's one
That's at
person.
the state level, we decide
Okay,
at the state.
so it's like one person is stepping down and one person has offered to take his spot, so it's just whether anybody wants to go and vote in person besides
Or
myself.
nominate somebody.
Right, or nominate.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Or if any of you were feeling so inclined to run for the office, you could be a write-in candidate.
What is the?
Though actually
No.
you can't.
No, because they
Oh,
don't
no?
live in the
4 or
right
5.
district.
What's that?
We're not-
Because
we're
it's
not.
4 and 5.
Oh. Okay. I'm sorry.
What does the committee do?
I-
Kevin, do you know what this committee
I
does?
don't know, I'm
I
sorry.
learned last year, cause I went and it was really tiny, like whatever they did, it was sort of like they voted once or twice on things that.
It's like a school district organization, you know, but it's like, sort of like,
Boundaries. Did they change the boundaries? I don't know what they did.
like.
Yes,
When is the
but
last
that is
time-
one of the.
When is the
Do
last
they?
time they stand ready to change boundaries? Last time it was 1957.
Yeah, because they
that's
follow supervisors' boundaries, I believe,
That's
the
correct.
county supervisors.
Somebody has to stand watch.
Exactly.
Okay, I think last year I went because I was going to the dinner anyway, because they need to make sure they have a quorum
Mm-hmm.
in order to vote, so. Nobody else interested, I'll go again.
Is
Seven-
this going to be at the October 2nd?
Yeah.
dinner? Okay.
But I think you have to go there for an hour early,
Yeah.
and the meeting takes all of 7 minutes. And so you're like, why did you call it an hour early?
Sounds like.
I actually ended up going home and not staying for the dinner and the meeting, I'm like,
I heard there's an open bar and some excellent dancing.
Well, then I'm
That's what I heard.
Sounds a lot like the dinner.
I
meeting.
missed that part, I wasn't invited to the private package. Okay, 7.5.3, superintendent's report.
Well, I'll take a cue from Hank and have my comments directly in inverse relationship to the time of the evening. I'll just say that going back to even earlier this evening, and a theme that I've heard certainly from you guys since my arrival in the district is I really value how much this board is doing things differently. I feel that we do, as a district, ask questions that, as I'm finding out, are not necessarily asked by other districts when it comes to protocol and negotiations, or when it comes to the fact that we were the only district to bring forward an issue about student information within the student information system of the county and the state level. I just am grateful I'm part of a team that really is doing that, and I certainly hear very clearly from you guys how much of a priority it is representing this community, that we are looking deeper and asking questions and not just simply accepting what is either status quo or maybe industry standard. And so I know that it took took your trust in me more so perhaps than your trust in the process ultimately, and your willingness to move forward with this climate tech, and I appreciate it. But again, I just appreciate even more so the the broad view that we have as a district and you guys have given as a board to really take that level of critical eye to each of these topics. So, thank you.
Items for future agendas.
This before, and I know that there would be a delay getting on the agenda because it's a very large topic. But I am curious to know what the administration's thinking is about potentially doing some sort of bilingual education. It's permissive now,
Right.
it's full. I don't know that it's necessarily desirable, but I do think it's something we're looking at.
And if so, what language?
The whole thing, right? I mean, what does it all mean?
I
have some
think
nephews.
you'd say Spanish.
Well, I have some nephews studying Chinese.
There's
Yeah.
Warpark, right, is doing Chinese, or Simi, somebody is.
Well, significantly different to have a single foreign language offered compared to a full dual immersion program. I can say with certainty we not only don't currently, nor do we have the ability to recruit for bilingual teachers in any language other than Spanish. So Spanish, unfortunately, be the only option simply by the number of teachers that would be required to be able to do that.
But I think that's the whole issue, is the cost of it, and do we actually have staff that could,
Right, because
be
it's
able to
something
do
that
it?
is even of a necessarily a benefit to us. I mean, I know seemingly during the school closure thing, it sort of revealed that we have a sizable Latino population. Some people seem to think that was a surprise. And so, I think we've made great strides in terms of the translation. But being bilingual in whatever it is a competitive advantage that's completely undeniable.
Absolutely.
It's also a developmental advantage that research is beginning to show. And doggone it, it's a heck of a lot easier to learn when you're young.
Right.
I know, 'cause I speak English. That's all. So yeah, I think, given that opportunity is open to us, I think it's worth at least a thought experiment. Right?
Absolutely.
Is there something that in that area that would benefit our students, potentially also make some of our schools maybe more attractive? I don't know. It's a big thing. So I'm just curious.
Absolutely. Cheryl, get right on.
I have a lot to say about it. It excites me. I
wasn't asking you a comment now. I was saying that's going to be another research project for you.
I'll work on it. But I was a foreign language teacher, so
Right,
I have a lot to say on the matter.
Okay, consent calendar. Any questions? Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Okay, we will be adjourning to closed session. We will not need to reconvene. I would suggest that we return to closed session just to finish items 1 and 2 and not to cover, and then maybe have Kathy send us all emails to try to find a date before our next meeting to have just a closed session for personnel. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, because I need
Can we-
a lot of time to talk about that.
But if we can finish by 9, like we think closed session, just try to buzz through it, so we didn't quite finish. Okay, so we are adjourned. Open session.